see the chamber completely full with the public. So first we will have Canon Weber to say the prayer, please.
O God our Father, we continue to pray for this council, its members and officers, at a time of uncertainty. We pray that the future governance of this area may be secured to have ways of working that benefit this district and all who live here. We pray for all who are concerned about their future employment and for future funding of essential services. May we pledge ourselves to consider always the common good of the people we serve, whether we are councillors, employees, or vicars. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Councillor Miller would like to say a few words.
I could actually, thank you, Chairman. Michael, we know it's your last meeting actually, and we're very sorry to hear you are retiring, and I'm sure you're delighted. And you are a man who actually stepped in to do my mother's funeral all those years ago, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
You are a fine man, and you've always been supportive of this council. This is a gift from the Conservative Group for you, Michael, as a sort of thank you very much indeed, and wish you all the very best for the future.
Thank you very much, Chris.
We wish you all a happy retirement, if you ever retire in that profession.
Not really, but thank you, Chair.
So now we will take the minutes. So is that your wishes that I sign the minutes? And before I start, I will go directly to a little bit of housekeeping. When you look at your agenda papers, after number 15, in order, because as you know, number 16 and 17, you have exclusion of the public. What I will do, I will take 18 and 19, urgent business. I will take that after 15 in order for the public to be able to leave when we have the pink paint. Is that clear? So when we are
Just clarify, Jim, it's in one pink paper, I thought, not two.
the one pink paper, when I say the pink papers,
Okay, thank you.
the pink paper.
I was getting confused, Madam Chairman, thank you.
Sorry, thank you. So I hope it will be better for everybody. Now, apology of absence.
Councillor Rupert Fox, Councillor Wayne Howard, Councillor Amy Howard, Councillor Nick Wright, Councillor Fraser Allen and Councillor Daventry.
Thank you so much.
And Councillor Aidan Ramsey.
Thank you. Now, declaration of member interest. Yes, please.
Yes, I noticed we've got Reach the Health on the agenda again. Just to remind members and the Chair that I'm a paid-up member of Reach the Health as an employee trust fund.
Thank you. And sorry, Councillor Max.
I'm like to, I'm a paid-up member of Reach the Health.
And if during the meeting you suddenly remember that you have an interest, please just let it know. Thank you. Chairman announcements. Well, I have not. You have received what I've done last month. You will be pleased to know that that is the pinnacle of my career as chairman this year, and we will, I hope the budget meeting will not be too long because it has been a long day for a lot of us, so I will try to keep the meeting to to a reasonable time. Thank you. So now we go to item 6, question on the Council Rule number 10 and 11. So I will invite first the question from Colin Paul to Councillor Miller, please. Colin Paul.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. No doubt a slip of the tongue intended. But Madam Chairman, it's quite strange that I read this letter, observation and question to you in this current light. However, an observation that Site 5 retail has not yet started, i.e. the derelict building still standing along with the trees. As it's now nesting time, I assume they will have to wait until the end of autumn. Or could it be that they're waiting for the recently passed plans for a cinema and retail to come forward? Or possibly waiting for the outcome of Unitary. I've added, Madam Chairman, and excuse me, unfortunately I now know that my observations have been preempted by the recent abandonment of the whole project. I'm beginning to think that Unitary is the county's equivalent of Brexit. The amount of misleading media stories is not helping. Plus the announcement of the NCC's 5% tax increase. At a time when the police and the crime commissioner has increased his precept, not forgetting the rumoured 36% increase of the town council precept. Leads me to think that residents will be far worse off than originally thought. The question I have, Madam Chairman, in the light of the above, would the Leader of Council confirm how the estimated £2 billion of NCC debt will be attributed, i.e. cost to households, residents, and over what period of time? I've added, will the debt be on the same repayment basis as PFI, in other words, over 30 years? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank Mr. Paul. It's always good to see Mr. Paul back in the chamber for his observations and question. I'm just going to ask the question actually regarding the County Council's debt or liabilities. We're going through a process of moving towards Unitary. We had long meetings today on that particular issue, how we're moving, and the timelines are very tight, as you can imagine, because we're meant to be actually, these days, the 1st of April next year, so we're only just over 13 months away. So therefore, we're going to go through a process of disaggregation of both the County Council's assets and liabilities, which, maybe the debt and other functions will play a part in that, and that will then determine where it sits eventually. So we're not in a position yet to understand where it's going to go, or how much will be involved. And I know the County Council is working very hard at the moment to try and get to that clean slate position or balance the books as best they can by next year. There's a lot of work to be done, Madam Chairman. It's very clear today, and Ian was there as well, and Vincent R. It's very clear to me it's going to be one hell of a job to get there by 1st of April next year. But obviously that's the intention at the moment. But I think to answer Councillor Paul's question, really it's a matter of time to see how much both assets and liabilities are there, and then the process of where those go in the north or the west will then take place. Thank you.
Question from Ian Campbell to Councillor Miller. Mr. Campbell.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you. If I read directly from the letter, please. It was addressed to Mr. Vincent, but it was obviously for the whole council. You may remember that Middlemore Residents Association wrote to you during February 2017 expressing frustration at how long the path and road surfacing completion works were taking to complete on Middlemore. This was raised at the full council meeting, and we did receive a response providing some reasons for the delays. We followed this up with a further query in May 2018, voicing our concerns in the light of the proposed reorganisation of local government. A response to this was published in the meeting minutes, advising that the roads on Middlemore would receive their finished surface during the current financial year, with a potential delay on those adjacent to remaining development plots. We have pulled together a rough timeline of events which may not include everything, but it quite clearly shows that we have been actively pursuing this issue since at least July 2015. It would seem that despite pursuing this since then, there is little progress. The latest information we have received suggests that NCC have not submitted a price for undertaking the work, so invitations for tender are being prepared, and because of this it is unlikely that the works will be commenced this financial year. The position is similar for the Middlemore Heartlands Link Road, where invitations for tender are being progressed. Therefore, it appears that there has been no progress since February 2017. Middlemore Road and the bus exit come up at every Residents' Association meeting, and there is growing frustration at the lack of progress. We therefore request a formal response from the Council to be sent to the address at the bottom of this letter to the questions below. 1. Where are you in the tender process? i.e. how many prices do you have so far? 2. When do you expect the works to be completed? A realistic response would be appreciated. And 3. How can you guarantee this, given that we have been advised of completion during each financial year since 2015? There the letter ends, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Mr. Campbell for his question and points he raises. I understand the frustration of Middlemore residents, and what I'm going to give you is a straightforward answer, so I think you deserve that out of all respect. The completion of the roads on the Middlemore estate has been a source of frustration both for the residents of your area and to this council for a considerable period of time. As Mr. Campbell notes, despite repeated requests and undertakings, NCC's provider, Kier WSP, has not reduced the price for carrying out the works. We find this surprising given the cutbacks on highway maintenance. It would have seemed natural for Kier WSP to want the work. However, that is the situation. Therefore, this council has decided to seek tenders in the traditional way, Madam Chairman. This has required it to fully specify the works required in order that full tenders can be obtained. This will lead to the work taking place, subject to obviously to interest from suitable contractors during this year. I should add that this will not include the conversion of the busway into an all-purpose road. That will follow later once the necessary investigations into the utility services can be carried out. This is not currently possible because part of the area is within an active construction site. However, that work will follow on as soon as practical. Likewise, as has been explained before, the completion works will not include the roads fronting the remaining development plots on Middlemore because the new surfaces will be damaged. Those areas will be completed once the building works are completed. I realise this response will not necessarily satisfy Mr. Campbell, but I believe it's right to be straightforward and honest about the situation. We'll do as much as we can in this council as soon as we can.
Thank you so much. Question for member of the council. Could I invite Councillor Wendy Reynolds and Councillor Leader?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just before I start, just the representative reports below. Councillor Orwell, he has some reports, so just on that notice. On the 17th of May 2017, this council passed a motion requiring members serving on outside bodies to submit reports to the council. At the council meeting on the 16th of May 2018, I asked why some representatives on outside bodies have not submitted written reports. In response, the monitoring officer advised the council that written reports were a recommendation, not an obligation. Good practice, but not necessarily needs to be done, the formal position. At a meeting on the 26th of July 18, I asked if you, as leader of the council, were to write to those who were representatives on outside bodies in 17-18, asking them to submit reports if they had not already done so. In response, you said, the fact that some councillors have not complied with the previous resolution is unfortunate. Although this is the last council meeting of 18-19, a majority of members of your group have not yet submitted reports as representative on outside bodies for the current year. Even if such reports are not mandatory, do you accept that this is unfortunate that so many of your colleagues have failed to follow what the monitoring officer has described as good practice? Will you recommend to council that members' failure to provide reports on their work as representative on outside bodies should be considered when appointing representatives for the coming year? I'm attaching a list of representatives from who this council has not received reports 18-19. Although some organisations have sent information to members directly, do you accept that the council should be informed about how many meetings representatives have attended, what contributions they have made at meetings, what issues of significance to DDC have been discussed, etc.?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank Councillor Randall for her question. And I just want to say before we start, on the PSP Daventry LLP, where also myself and Malcolm Longley are the representatives, that's now been disbanded, as you will know from the council minutes before, or council discussion before. You actually asked a number of questions there, Councillor Randall, related to the same subject. We have previously resolved that representatives on outside bodies would submit reports. I agree with that totally, and I respect that decision and would encourage members to do so. Of course, as have not yet, do so, and of course, we have not yet reached year end when reports are expected, even though we're close to it. However, I'm not going to make judgments on who is appropriate to represent the council and outside bodies based upon the production of reports. It is not the production of the report that is useful to the council, it's the use of the information or experience gained when we deliberate on items of business with outside bodies. We do not need to know how many meetings have been attended and particular contributions made, but I agree with you, what we need to know are issues of significance to this council and the Daventry district area. And I have indicated how this is done without formal reports. So I'm really saying people, and Councillor Walker, as you say, to put a report on his area, if members want to do that, that's fine. But during the year, and I'll give you one example, I often put stuff out in email. I often copy all members into emails that are relevant to our council area. And I will continue to do that on bodies I'm involved outside. So there's a number of ways you can do that. And obviously members can always ask portfolio holders or representatives on these bodies any questions they wish to do. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you so much, Councillor Miller. These questions from Councillor Stephen Dash to Councillor Miller.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Back in October 2018, this council agreed to contribute 200,000, I believe, out of a total of 350,000, finance repairs to the bridge carrying the road over the former railway at Charlwelton, and the site that is now used by Aero Research Partners Limited. This was in spite of arguments advanced by my colleagues and myself that such expenditure was not warranted. I had occasion to pass through Charlwelton the other day, as we probably all do from time to time. I was therefore disappointed that the road closure notices were still in place. And indeed, peeking through the gates of ARP site, there was no evidence of any repair works to the bridge having been started, let alone progressing towards a visible conclusion. I recall the bridge was closed in June 2018, which is 8 months ago now. This is 8 months for residents to follow long-winded diversions to their villages, farms and their businesses. Will the leader therefore please provide an update on the completion of this project? Has the work actually started? When will it be completed? What's the hold-up?
Councillor Miller, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank Councillor Dash for his question. Of course, I do remember you taking an interest in this item before. Work on the Catesby Road Bridge has not yet started, as you say, quite rightly. This is mainly because approval in principle has been sought from Northamptonshire County Council as Highways Authority for the proposed works. There has been dialogue between NCC and Aero Research Partners, the owners, about precisely what will be required, but that is still not yet resolved, unfortunately. As this requires agreement between two parties, I cannot give you, unfortunately, a definitive timescale for it to be concluded, and therefore for works to commence. It's outside our control, basically, between the two sides. This council's part has reached agreement on the terms which grant to achieve reopening of the bridge, and it's being put into legal form. It is not expected that this will result in any delay to the works. Clearly, we all want to see the bridge reopened as soon as possible, and DDC has done what it can to try and achieve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Question from Councillor Kenrichi to Councillor Prismere, please.
Thank you, Chair. When I submitted this question a few days ago, I hadn't appreciated quite how timely it was going to be. If Councillor Miller is intending to address most of these issues when we have a special item on the agenda, I would be happy to make my question. assuming that we'll have an opportunity to, to contribute then, and if necessary, ask any supplementary questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I was going to say it would be Councillor James, actually, who'll be the lead on this particular item later in the agenda. The only thing I'd like to say, actually, I agree with you, Councillor Richard, it is the national retail situation that's causing the problem, but obviously when we get to that item, we'll be able to have a full debate on it. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I am sorry, but Councillor Aidan Ramsey is not here. Would Councillor Ritchie like to use a question, or Councillor Dye, or Councillor Switcher, or Councillor?
Thank you, Chair. You'll appreciate I have been in touch with the Chief Executive in that Councillor Ramsey asked if he was unable to be here, if I would take care of his question. I again find I have been preempted by a much longer and fuller question on the state of Middlemore roads. Can I take the question, assume it has been asked and answered, and if that is the case, I would like to just ask a supplementary, as I am entitled to do. My supplementary, really to the Leader of the Council, is it fair on those people who have been paying council tax based on the fact that their properties should have proper roads maintained around about them? Is it fair that they should be paying the full back to council tax over all these years when nobody has put a surface on the roads yet? Is there not a mechanism that you can look at that would regard the ban perhaps of our homes to be reduced over these periods, and some sort of refund made in compensation for what they needed to put up with for so long?
Thank you much indeed, Chairman. I'd like to thank Councillor Richard for presenting Councillor Ramsey's question on his behalf. I think part of the previous question has been answered, but the one point in this question which wasn't really covered is relating to the bus lane. And I just want to say that the link road Councillor Ramsey refers to is currently restricted to buses and cycles. I'm puzzled by his reference to it being one way though, because there are no signs suggesting this. Whilst the council decided to widen the busway and convert it to an all-purpose road, this has not yet been possible. The council would be neglecting its duties to the public if it removed the signs indicating the restrictions until it was safe to do so. As soon as the roadway has been widened, the signs will be removed. On the latter part about council tax, I think Council Richard's been around long enough to know the council tax system doesn't work that way. I think it's absolutely right that council taxpayers should receive the services they expect, and obviously they have to make representations to those responsible. But we at this council do our utmost to try what we can do within our powers to satisfy the Middlemore residents. Thank you.
Motion of the council to take the rule request. Councillor, please.
Thank you. You have a detailed motion in front of you, and I ask that this council supports the award of a 100% grant to Daventry Parish Council for traffic calming measures. Just a brief summary is for several years the Parish Council have raised concerns about the excessive vehicles speeding through the 30-mile-per-hour limit. We obtained traffic data to evidence that there was in fact an issue of speeding through the village. The straight nature of the road and the houses set back leads towards the issue. A number of injury accidents have also been recorded along this route, including a fatality. Meetings were held with the Parish Council and Northamptonshire Council, and a project was put in place. With the issuing of the Section 114 notices, unfortunately the project came to a halt because there was no funding available. Prior to this evening, I had been asked to find out the amount that Warwickshire were contributing to the project, and that is in the region of £3,000. Interestingly, after many conversations today about their contribution, they have confirmed that they will now go ahead with the project regardless of it being in its entirety. That will, however, result in part of Staverton having the speed limit and part of it not. Staverton normally raise their precept by between 2 and 3%. This year we've increased it by 5% to help fund the planting, etc., that will be undertaken at the end of the project. What I ask is that you support this motion, as the project and its measures will help deliver a safe environment by assisting the movement of all road users along this section, including pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders. It will provide enhanced accessibility for the elderly and the disabled, and albeit a smaller element with my environment hat on, is it should also lead to a reduced level of pollution. Thank you.
Do you have any similar?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is a real frustration for the residents, and we see through no fault of their own. They have identified a need, a safety need, a community safety need within their community. They've gone to the appropriate authorities to address this. They've had their project accepted, that it needs to be done, that we need to take care of this, and through no fault of their own, because of the mismanagement of the county's monies and etc., the project falls. A viable project falls by the wayside. They then come to the district, and I think that the districts have been very kind to take this on as a grant, but even we have fallen short with the amount of monies we want to give them. So what we're going to end up with is a community safety issue for the people using that road. We have the monies and we have the ability to solve that problem, yet we are choosing not to fully fund this. I think this is a case where we should fully fund it, and we should fully fund it so that we can ensure that people are, first of all, safe, that they can use the road. This is a viable project that has been through all types of criteria, that it is proper to do this, and through no fault of the residents, it appears to be that there is a lack of complete commitment by the various authorities, even though it's not our responsibility to put this right. But we've got a chance to do this. So I would encourage the colleagues, for the sake of the residents of Daventry districts and the people that use that road, please allow this to go forward, to get this project complete so we don't end up with half of it being done and half of it not being done. Let's just get the job done, and let's provide a safe environment for the people of our district. Thank you.
Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Gadd.
Thank you, Chair. I've actually had a look at some of the road traffic accident data for this road. First thing I'd say is, I mean, there's been an unfortunate fatality towards the shopper on that road, as you're aware of. But I've also found out that in terms of reported accidents, that is populated a resource called Crash Map, which even Kia WSP pushes towards the councillors. There hasn't been an accident on that road in the last 18 months, recorded and reported. Now, I can only say that that's relying on data that's been forwarded to that body. Now, of course, being a nurse, unfortunately seeing the effects of road traffic accidents, I would support this in its entirety. But there are some problems. The problems are, can we expect residents to double pay in terms of already paid within for amenities and services which are, and I've been reminded many times in this chamber by Councillor Mills and others, that it's not the jurisdiction of this council to provide highways services, but we can pay for them. And I have to say to you, two other pinch points that I would mention. When I was elected 4 years ago, one of my promises to Welton was to try and sort out the problems with Crockwell Hill Junction, which is the junction that leads over to Station Road. It has an adverse camber and very difficult to sight traffic. I tried my very best, but was told from Kia WSP that no monies were available to carry out the remedial works. I put forward information, data as well, demonstrating that accidents had happened on that pinch point, and I failed. I failed because they said it wasn't a priority. In Warwickshire, it's fantastic to know that they are providing some financial support. And equally, as we leave our district on the A45 towards Dunchurch, there's a crossroads at Willoughby you may be familiar with, a long down lane. Although there's been 8 reported incidents on this 4 or 5 mile stretch from the refuse island all the way through to Upper Shotborough, there's been 6 incidents on that one junction alone, which is on the Warwickshire side. So I'd advocate perhaps they spent the money in terms of remedial works on that one pinch point, but I'd like money to be spent on all of these remedial works, but simply it has to be prioritised. So I can't support this motion knowing that the monies will come from other taxpayers and they haven't had their remedial works done within their vicinity.
Councillor Datt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I agree wholeheartedly with what Councillor Pritchard has said. I think, again, as was pointed out in my question to the leader, this council is paying for things, again, that it is not meant to be paying for. It's all very honourable, I'm sure, but it's misplaced. There are plenty of examples. I live on Ashby Road. I know that with Site 5 being cancelled, that the traffic calming measures were part of that. So I'll look forward to this council paying for those. Also in my residence area around the Grange, there's a good few racetracks down there that people like to run around. So again, I'll look forward to this council financing traffic calming measures there. I'm sure it won't happen, so I'm not convinced that it should happen through Somerton. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Datt. Councillor O'Mahony.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to reiterate the same thing, really. I mean, there are plenty of areas in the district where there have been fatalities, where there are frequent accidents. So how do you decipher which one is more important than the other? If it was a case that we were going to do all of them, then that would be absolutely fine. I frequently go along the road to Somerton, and I would say that the traffic on the whole is far more slower through there than it is around the racetrack through a lot of the estates within the town. So we've heard a question from a resident asking about surfacing up on Middlemore. How he's going to sit there and think, well, how is that fair? So I'm afraid I cannot support this motion.
Sorry, I'm just having a senior moment now. Councillor Wesley, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't think anyone doesn't support public safety and health and well-being, do they? But this happens all over the place all of the time, and there are limited funds. I think it's really, really disappointing. There's already a grant application. There are authorities around this. There's Warwickshire County Council. There's a Daventry District Council grant that's already been given. And the one authority that's not actually looking to help out with this is the Parish Council. There is an opportunity there for the Parish Council to actually say, actually we do need this. Other councils are giving money, so let's at least look to the rest of the residents in the district and say we'll contribute to this. And on the basis that the residents set to plants and trees, surely the safety aspect of this is far more important than planting some trees. Trees are nice, but if it's about safety, spend the money on the road. That's it. And I know it's not their responsibility, it's not this council's responsibility. Don't want to sit here and die or anything, but there's plenty of other roads to spend this money on. I use that road all the time to I don't think it's particularly dangerous. I know it's straight, but that is an advantage as well, isn't it? But that's just my opinion on this. I think if they come forward and said we were actually raising our police to offer some help on this, and I'd be more than inclined to support it, but not at the moment.
Councillor Gifford, please.
Right,
sorry, nobody, we haven't seen any other hand going up, so Councillor Gifford, just to make sure.
Okay, regarding the accidents, within a 5-year period, we've had the 1 fatal and 2 slight injury accidents on the Warwickshire County Board. We've had a further 2 accidents, 1 serious and 1 slight, at the Catesby Road junction, the Daventry road roundabout, and there has been another serious injury, so there are other accidents there. This has been through due diligence, and there has to be a scoring criteria throughout the county, and the county prioritised this as a project above others. We did fund, prior to this, the evidence of the traffic survey to evidence to the county that there was an issue there, and we've spent a lot of resource time on the project. And I agree, you know, it's not fair that in this current climate some get permission to be undertaken and others do. But let's not put a kibosh on all projects. The precept, yes, we have increased our precept above what we normally increase, but it was considered with all the other increases that were going on, that it really was again the residents that would suffer. So we have increased contribution to the project. As I say, it's been through the county due diligence. It has been awarded priority for it to be approved. So I ask that this council support this motion.
So now, now we go to support, please. So who would like to be for this motion, please?
I don't know the proposer. What we're doing it. Sorry.
12, Chair.
Against, please? 6.
7, Chair.
7 against. The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 8, report of committee. Which takes them en bloc. Agree? Item 9, recommendations of committee. SG 04-1902, weak strategy register. Councillor Chris Miller.
Mr. Chairman. This came on from the statutory meeting held on the 7th of February. The register has been reviewed partly through the year to reflect issues regarding the local government reform agenda, which we're heavily involved in at the moment, and section 4.4 of the report took out the changes. So, Madam Chair, I just want to put to the Council that we set the recommendation as shown in your papers that the updated strategic restriction of 2017 to 2020 be adopted.
Do you have the second one? Councillor Gifford?
I'd just like to say that, you know, as a council, we often talk about how prudent we are with our finances, but I think some credit ought to go to this council as well for the way we manage our risks. We have a robust risk register, and we recognise challenges and we put mitigation in place. So I just thought I'd like to highlight that as well.
Thank you. Do we agree?
Agree.
Thank you. SG 05-1901, Daventry District Council Provision of Housing Assistance to receive. Councillor Olga, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm seeking approval from Council to amend the provisions of the housing assistance policy by removing the discretionary loans. I'm sure everyone has read the papers, and as you see, that the loans have been available since February of 2012, and only one loan has ever been taken up, and that was actually taken up a month after its introduction in March 2012. Since then, no loans, whether that is for personal habitation or for rent, have been issued by this council. The council were quite wise and went out to consultation to ensure and inform its decision making. So in December last year, January this year, they went to consultation, and that consultation was open up to the public, and they target charity organisations, landlords and the council people's panel. The majority of the respondents who expressed the view felt the loans should be withdrawn. There was a really good debate, I felt, and strategy regarding the loans, and there was some concern about whether they had been well published, well advertised. I think Councillor Randall and Ramsey also did a sort of a dip test on whether they could access where the loans were. In fact, that view was also echoed in the consultation, that these loans were not widely known. But this actually is in despite of several years of routinely, this council routinely contacting owners of empty homes and promoting these loans without any take-up. I decided, I was very curious, and I thought that was a good idea to actually go on. So I actually went on to the DC at Daventry District Council site and put in the word loans, and it was fourth on the list, the policy. So it is accessible there, it is there, and was able to find that. So I'm actually satisfied, based on what we've done previously and what we have done with regard to our site, that the loans are there. They're just apparently, through consultation and through demand, just not a facility that the public actually require. Finally, I think it was Councillor Richie and Osborne talked about, well, why don't we just keep it? Why don't we just keep the loans just in case? Well, I'm not satisfied that that's illogical, based on the fact that we've only had one ever uptake, and that was a month after it was introduced in 2012, and nothing up until that point, despite the fact that we have advertised it. It is accessible on our site. And I'm not sure, it's probably Councillor Morgan's remit, that presumably if we have this loan facilities, we need to put monies into that to making sure that we can furnish them if they came in. And it doesn't appear that there is a demand at all, and therefore putting money there would just be sitting in the bank and not actually doing useful things for the residents. And so therefore I recommend that the provisions of the loans be removed and the strategic house plan be amended accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor
nothing to say, Madam Chairman.
Robin Brown. Sorry. Sorry, I didn't
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I am against this being removed. I've just listened to what Councillor August's got to say, and if I was a member of public looking for something, I definitely would not think to put loan into the search bar of a district council. The loans wouldn't be somewhere where I would think I would go to a district council for. I would like to see this deferred actually for say 6 months and go out and put something out on social media. I know you said last time that people have a right to retain empty properties if they wish so. But I did look at some other councils up and down the country to see what they'd been doing. And I found that in March 18, a bill was passed so that councils could charge double the amount of council tax on properties that have been empty for more than 2 years, as a way of encouraging them to get rid of their, or either upgrade their homes or sell their home. As we've got housing is so few. I was talking to somebody the other day and they were looking for a one-bedroom property, and they said there's next to nothing available. We've got places in the town that have got empty flats upstairs. We've got one down the High Street, New Street. That's got flats above. The flats have been done up. nobody's ever has forced them to let these properties, and they're just sat there empty, becoming more and more derelict. So I would like to see this deferred for 6 months, something go out a lot on social media. I expect most of the audience here, not audience, but members of residents here, aren't aware that there is a loan available of up to 15,000 if you've got an empty property to try and bring it back into use, or to try and rent it out. But everybody I spoke to, nobody is aware of this. Which is very unfortunate. So if the council, offers a scheme that nobody really knows about, it's a shame. So I'd like to see it deferred for 6 months. Go back out, do some advertising, go back on social media, to what people pick things up from social media, and see if there is any uptake, and whether we do charge the amount of council tax if a property has been empty for two years. I know that if the property's for sale, then they don't, but if it's just empty, different other councils up and down the country seem to be doing this.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. Just really a quick question for Councillor Order to just answer when he responds. We're told that nobody has taken out a loan under this scheme for the last 6 or 7 years. Can he tell us what the costs has been in terms of a survey, in terms of endless committee papers, thousands of words on the issue? How much has been spent to try to stop something that hasn't cost us anything?
Councillor Griffith.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. I can't remember all the details, but I do know we have a very effective empty home strategy, and all these sorts of issues that have been raised are dealt with within that. And for that reason, we don't have empty homes. We do contact people directly. We do charge council tax even when these properties are on the market. So I think we are very effective dealing with our empty homes. And perhaps councillors aren't aware of this, but if they look on Daventry, they will actually see the strategy. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Older, please.
Yes, Councillor Richard, I haven't got a clue what that question was, to be honest. But if anyone else can help me out, I would appreciate that. But with regard to Councillor Randall, I think if you're looking for a loan from the district council, I should think the word loan is probably the best word to use to search for that loan, but we may differ on that. I've got a feeling we do increase our tax, and I will refer to the officer to give you more details on that. But also, something that Councillor our Deputy Leader, Lynn. It has been a long day for us here, Councillor Griffin. I'm so sorry. Should definitely be said about. We do have formal and informal measures, along with our partner agencies, to deal with empty houses that are causing problems. But I think people have a right to have an empty premise if they wish to have that. I don't think we should be compelling people to do something with that house unless there is a problem with it that is causing either antisocial behaviour or problems to the greater community, and then we do have powers to intervene. So with regard to the tax issue, I am aware that we do, but I just want to confirm that, and maybe my officer can fill the chamber in on that.
Please. Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that as soon as the house has been empty for 2 weeks, 100% of the council tax is charged, subject to not being any other exemption. I'll look to Tony because he'll know if I've got any of this mixed up. And after a 2-year period, all empty properties are charged an additional 50%, which was the maximum at the time when we set that policy, something like 4 years ago.
Thank you. Mr. Gillett, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, Chairman. Maria's made the point. I've just clarified that council tax is due immediately on empty properties, not in 2 weeks.
Sorry, just maybe I was going to give Councillor Ritchie these questions. I honestly didn't understand it, sir. But you know that you can speak to me at any time and try and explain it to me. Thank you.
Would you?
Yeah, my question was merely, we appear to have spent money on conducting a survey. There must have been office of time involved. There must have been a lot of your time, our time involved, there have been an awful lot of bits of paper that have been circulated to the strategy group and now to council, and it all seems to get rid of something, to get rid of a scheme for which there has been no cost. It just doesn't make sense.
So,
Sorry,
can I answer his question?
Do you want to answer?
Yeah, I get it.
Do you remember?
Yeah, if I remember what I'm doing. No, I do understand. I disagree. You know, we have a policy here that quite evidently is not being used. I think there is an issue here with regard to if we are going to continue something that isn't going to be used, then presumably you can't just budget for it. You can't just not put money into that. So actually, those monies that you may have to keep aside cannot be used for any other areas. But that isn't my area of expertise. That's just me thinking logically with regard to this. But it isn't being used, and it isn't being used, and it's important that we are a council of order, that we ensure that our policies are updated and they are fit for purpose for the residents of this community. This particular policy, these particular loans are not required by our community because they have not been called upon since the inception of it in 2012. I can't see the logic of continuing that. Thank you, Jim.
Councillor Holland,
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Olga already got in there. Perhaps you had too long in the county chamber today. I think I was going to speak on behalf of Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Ritchie obviously made his points again, but I think what Councillor Randall was saying was actually you should spend another 6 months spending time and officers' time investigating it further. So perhaps Councillor Ritchie wants to converse with Councillor Randall about the optimum time we should invest in this. I think I agree entirely. If a policy is out of date, it's not used, then we should look at it and conclude a new policy framework. Thank you, Chair.
do we agree? No. So recommendation?
Agree.
Against? 4. 1806-1901, seal enforcement. Councillor Chandler, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Members will be familiar with the use of the term SIL to explain community infrastructure levy. Under the SIL regulations of 2010, surcharges are provided for in various circumstances where a person fails to provide the information or make the payments when they're required to do so. There are also a range of enforcement provisions designed to fulfill the incentive of making people do what they're supposed to do. We haven't actually got a formal policy in place, and we think it would be useful to set out formally the responsibility for these enforcement provisions and to adopt a formal policy in this regard. There are a range of SIL enforcement powers available, and some of them are essentially just debt collection measures, but some of them are related to litigation. And they're all subject to statutory control and limitations, so there's no danger here of us getting happier at enforcing matters which shouldn't be enforced. Typically, financial measures such as surcharges are subject to appeal to an appointed person who may well be the district valuer. As the collection of SIL is closely allied to development management, which falls within the purview of the Executive Director community, the proposal is that the decisions on specific enforcement cases should fall to that Executive Director. We also propose that, as it has already been the case, the Council should underline its intention to apply surcharges unless genuine exceptional circumstances are described and explained. And examples were given at strategy group as to what that might mean. Now, of course, as I said, we don't have a formal policy in place, and normally the introduction of a new policy would require engagement and consultation and things of that nature. But this particular policy is so focused on the way council applies surcharges and other enforcement mechanisms, we consider that it's a matter for the council alone to make this decision. So the two proposals that I'm asking you to support, one is that authority should be granted to the executive director community to determine and exercise all enforcement provisions in legislation governing the community infrastructure levy, including the levying of surcharges. And two, that the default position should be that the council will levy and seek to collect any surcharges which may be imposed in accordance with legislation governing SIL. However, the executive director community may, if in her own opinion, in exceptional circumstances justify this, decide not to levy or seek to collect any such surcharge, either in whole or in part. That's what I'm asking for support for this evening, Chairman. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder?
Chair, I'm second this.
Councillor Reynolds.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I did speak about this in strategy, and it's not the first part, it's the second part that I still have an issue with. I think if there's going to be exceptional circumstances, I think that should just be incorporated into a policy. Those exceptional circumstances should be in that policy. I still don't think it's right to, in somebody's opinion, in exceptional circumstances. I just think it should be written very clearly in a policy. Everybody knows what exceptional circumstances are. So I still don't think that should be down to that person to make that decision. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Wastley.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a small point. I'm not sure it's the same in her opinion. In a policy, I think it should be the position and not the gender of the person that's actually talking about it. I know it's only little, but just my part to it says in her opinion, exceptional.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies if this overlaps with something that Councillor Wesley has just said, but I couldn't quite hear the comment that he made. But I was only going to suggest that, look, I agree with Councillor Randall that, what are exceptional circumstances need to be set out. If there is something that is so exceptional that it is not even defined in the exceptional circumstances, then there has got to be a way of dealing with it. I'm happy that that somebody has got to take that decision, but as long as that decision is reported with the reasons for taking it to all members of council.
Councillor Miller.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I didn't want to get involved in this debate, but I've heard what some members are saying. The point I want to make is, if those exceptional circumstances do occur, and it's not about the individual, it's about the position, I think this council should have trust in that position of the director to actually take a measured view on the point in question. And I just think that says, and probably won't happen if at all, but if it does happen, then it's just there, and I don't see the point of bringing it anywhere else up other than that. And I would have trust in that director, whoever they may be.
Yes, just in summary, Chairman, there are 2 points I wish to make. One is that the danger of listing the exceptional circumstances, as Councillor Ritchie has already hinted at, is that that list can't be exhaustive and something might occur that isn't on it. And the other point I would make is that the job title is Executive Director, and that means that they make executive decisions. But they obviously report them.
Councillor Randall.
Thank you. It's not about mistrusting. I don't want it to come across that way at all. It's not about an individual. I still think it could be quite easy. It's like any other policy. It's just, it's just listed, and it covers both. It covers all parties in that way. Because somebody's exceptional circumstances, view of exceptional circumstances, might not be the same as somebody else's. So I still think there should be a clear definition.
Councillor Osborne.
Nearly going to sleep, Chairman.
I was going to say, if you listed, and I hate to be the person trying to list what exceptional circumstances are, should you list them, put them down on paper, then you'd get the person that was trying to get out of paying still would have a good list of how you would try and get out of doing it as well. So I think it's best left as it is, and let somebody decide what are exceptional circumstances, not list it so that people can flaunt it.
Thank you, Chairman. If you care to turn to your pages on page 72, an example might be where a landowner is technically liable for a silt surcharge due to the action of another who cannot be pursued, for example, due to death or insolvency. Whilst unlikely, it seems reasonable to allow for such rare cases. They are going to be very rare because they're going to be very obvious, and this gives an example.
Thank you, Councillor for these examples.
I just wanted to point out, Chairman, that I did say that typically financial measures such as surcharges are subject to appeal to an appointed person who is not part of the council, and that will still be in place. So if anybody feels particularly aggrieved by the decision made by the executive director, then they do have an appeal route open.
Do we agree with the recommendation?
Agreed.
Against? For. AG 07-1901, revision to the discretionary rate review guidelines. Councillor Moore.
Chairman's point. I declare an interest because I get these, as I did at Daventry. I received one of those rates. I received one, so I shan't be taking part in the debate or vote tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Good job you woke up in time. Thank you very much. This one was very straightforward and very welcome news for shopkeepers and those that provide services from shops across the district. This is basically the revision to the guidelines following the government's decision in the budget in October last year to give further relief. It's very simple, basically. In the policy which we saw in strategy, there is a small section at the back called the retail relief section. This has been inserted into the document, and this very simply describes how we'll handle this particular initiative. In terms of a couple of bits of detail, we set out there are 149 qualifying businesses at that point, with a benefit to them of £376,000 benefits in the current year. The positive news for the District Council is this doesn't cost us anything in terms of lost income or what have you, but it does give a benefit to the retailers across the district. And with that, Chair, I'd simply like to put that to the Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Shepherd, are you seconding?
No, I'll happily second, and also just make an observation, if I may, Chairman. We've been discussing in these items three discretionary matters for us, three policies. And that reminds me of the fact that in May 20, of course, there'll be a unitary. And I presume it's one of the tasks of the shadow to look at all the various discretionary policies of the three councils and to try and integrate them. And it seems to me that this particular one is by far the most urgent. The reason we're discussing this today is so that the business rate demands when they go out in April can reflect the relief that we give. And so it follows that by this time next year, hopefully there will be some coordination so that the same business rate approach can be taken throughout the new unitary. I simply observe that that is one of, I'm sure, a myriad of issues that are going to be challenging the shadow authority, and probably one of the most urgent.
Do we agree with the recommendation?
No.
Agree.
Against? SG 07-1902. Councillor Morgan again.
Chair, thank you. Thank you also to Councillor Shepherd for the previous comments. I think absolutely we're obviously at that stage anyway where everything would challenge us in terms of integration. Of course, we had interestingly opposite with Councillor Augers, which is a bit of tidying up before then. This one is about asset disposals, which we spoke about, of the strategy, and of course in the strategy these were no stranger to us. I do want to draw one point to our attention, and that is of course Town Centre Vision 5, Site 5, which we'll be talking about later on the agenda, which may have an impact on this particular table of some description in due course. We also will be discussing Reach for Health a bit later on as well in the agenda. So really I simply wanted to reserve time for other debates and put this to Council as the strategy. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Osborne. Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you. The Cadet Centre, it says on page 34, following on from strategy, that it was still available for repurchase, and the Executive Director advised that if it transpired that there could be an existing provision available to apply for a purchase notice, and legal advice was being sought. So I wondered if there was any update on that.
Chair, could I ask Simon Barrett to make a contribution to this?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm happy to do so. We have received the legal advice. That legal advice allowed us to serve the purchase notice which has been done, and it appears the cadet organisation has accepted its validity and wishes to complete the purchase.
Do we agree with the recommendation?
Agree.
Against? No. SG 07-1903. Councillor Morgan again.
Chair, thank you very much. This one is really, when we discussed this strategy, basically the layout of the document was slightly differently to previously because of new CIP guidelines, which we spoke about before, and of course through member training, etc. Really what we're doing here is we're simply agreeing boundaries in which we operate. It talks about our various strategies, capital strategy, treasury management, reporting strategy, etc. All of those items actually pulled out particularly at the strategy group, where we went through it in a bit more detail, of course, and it's really about the overall approach, which we also talk about at MTFP, which is really about business as usual and managing our money safely for a responsible way forward. Thank you, Chair.
Seconder. Councillor Osborne. Can you speak? So do we agree with the recommendation?
Agree.
Against? No. SG 07-1904, 2019-20, capital and revenue budget and medium-term commercial plan. That we will defer to discussion.
Chair, thank you. This is always the bit of the agenda on this at this point in the cycle that may confuse, because obviously we talk about it here and then we talk about it again later. Where later on we wrap it up. There is a very important point which I need to bring to members' attention here, and that is if you go back to the strategy documents on page 153 in the appendix on SIL, there is actually an error in the table we presented in the strategy. We actually presented a number, it's in the final column, for, unfortunately, site 5 itself actually happens, where we actually make a contribution of 2.572 millions. that number should actually be 1.258 millions. This doesn't actually make any material impact to the overall figure, but of course a bit later on we'll be discussing the impact of the Site 5 anyway, and we can take those discussions into account. And in any event, we'll know more in the fullness of time what the impact of those is. I didn't want to raise any more than that because obviously we had that meeting, and then we'll move on to the latest figures, which I'll come to later in the agenda. But I do understand you need to take acceptance on that.
Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you. Within this SG 071104, was this the part where there was a new allowances? Is that the end?
No. Members, independent panel bed.
It's just that it was on that page within that.
Agenda item 12.
Right, okay, thank you.
Do we agree? Sorry, Councillor Morgan.
Chair, I think Councillor Reynolds referring to page 131 where we actually set the principle, but obviously we don't agree on it per se. That's obviously separate, but the item we spoke about is where we were looking to have the extra months available.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. At the strategy group meetings, I raised a question about special expenses for Daventry, and I was assured that we would be sent a detailed list of expenses. I received something just this afternoon, but it was just exactly the same figures without any breakdown. I feel I'm not in a position in which I can explain to anybody in Daventry why we are being charged in Daventry in a different way from people in other parts of the district. I feel I can't support this because it hasn't been explained to me the basis of the charges that are being made.
Councillor Morgan.
Chair, first of all, thank you to 151 officer for circulating that information this afternoon. My understanding of it is this: so we have an element of the special expenses, and there is obviously a cost to the council, which basically takes the overhead of both members and officer time in as a small portion, and that amount is levelled onto the special expense. So the amount is what you see there. I'm sure you're going to want to come back, Councillor Ritchie, you're very eager. Perhaps Audra could also fill in some detail. That's my understanding. I think it's a pretty straightforward one, but I'm sure you want some more information on that.
Councillor Ritchie.
Chair, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, we ought to learn from the experiences of the County Council. On these financial matters, we have got to be transparent. As councillors, we have got to know what the basis is in which different costs have been charged to different parts of the district, how the allocations have been made. I just feel we have not been given that information, and that worries me.
We will ask our 151 officer to reply.
Thank you, Chair. As is noted, I did take down some details on the special expenses in terms of what makes up those charges, and I think the particular query you have is the line that says corporate and democratic core. In line with accounting practices, overheads are recharged across the services that we deliver. And it's different for Daventry special expenses. That picks up an amount of overhead, which is perfectly normal, acceptable accounting practice, because we deliver those services as opposed to the parishes who deliver their own services. So it's the charge for delivering those services.
Councillor Ritchie.
If I may come back on that, I am certainly not questioning the professionalism of our officers. All I'm saying that if we don't know how they are making these calculations, how they are apportioning overheads, without looking at what has gone into overheads, so that we can be satisfied that the overheads do indeed belong with special expenses rather than costs that should be apportioned across the entire district. Unless we've been able to actually to see that, we are not in a position to be able to put our hands on our hearts and say, I believe that this is a fair special expense, and this contributes to a fair council tax for people in Daventry.
Councillor Morgan.
Chair, thank you. I understand the figure that obviously Councillor Ritchie refers to, which is £36,034. And as Section 151 officer, as I have myself outlined the overall principle of that. I'm not sure if there's further granular detail that could be provided after the meeting. But as our 151 officer said, it's right and proper the way the cost is apportioned, and it is the overall overhead that is set into the special expense there for that element of the service. I'd like us to be able to give as much information to Councillor Randolph as possible, and also for other town ward members, of which I'm myself, of course. I understand the conceptual level of it, but if there's any further information after the meeting, we could provide a very granular level. I'm sure that'd be helpful, and much benefit to town ward members in particular.
Yes, Section 151 officer, please.
Members, in terms of recharges, there are a whole host of cost drivers that determine how overheads are spread across services. And in terms of those procedures, we are audited on the process, whether it's a recharge to Daventry special expenses or a recharge to any service that this council looks at. For the robustness of the driver that we choose, so for instance if it's based on cost, for the overheads to be apportioned that way, or if there's a specific driver, if it's the number of people involved in delivering those services, that's all part of what's set in the CIPLA code that we have to follow. And when we prepare those accounts and the statements are made, that's what's audited for the appropriateness of those recharge mechanisms. And that's all reported through to the governance committee and certainly audited through our processes and procedures for our internal audit. That's it really.
Councillor Daventry, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can I ask Councillor Morgan if he could move to another topic and just give us some clarification on the updated capital programme? As I'm slightly unclear as to how we could make commitments of circa 12.5 million after we're not here. Could he explain what the principle is of the capital programme post-2020 when the unit review post, and how we deal with those commitments going forward?
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bunting's probably got me on that question actually, and I would like to see further officer support, because I think it probably applies, well, it doesn't just apply to the cinema, of course, it applies to everything, and it's a much bigger picture. So if I can pass over.
So the Chief Executive would like to make a comment.
Chairman, we have to produce our annual accounts as if we were going to be here. We've got all the Secretary of State has still not made a decision whether we will or we won't. And even if he does, there's still two houses of Parliament for that particular decision to go through before it comes around. So we have to plan as if we were still going to be here beyond April 2020.
Our Section 151 officer.
Members, I would refer to the strategy group report, and in terms of my summary, where I actually explain the going concern concept. So whether we exist as Daventry District Council or whether we are part of another unitary, the going concern is the account should be prepared on the assumption that the functions of the authority will continue in operational existence for the foreseeable future. So regardless of what we're called, the functions continue.
Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, just going back to those special expenses, there have been questions have been asked quite numerous amount of years because so many of us really don't fully understand the special expenses for Daventry, because people say to me, well, does it mean that we pay for the electricity and the street lights, or does it mean that pays for the country park, or does it mean that it's just the grass cutting, or is it emptying the bin? So there's so many questions that residents actually ask that they want a breakdown, and I can't give them that breakdown because I don't know what that breakdown is either. And I think, was it £65 that shows special expense from memory for a band D? I think it was something like £65. You know, and there's so many things within this town, like if it was the country park, it's always quoted, you know, it's the jewel of the crown for the district, so that's district use. So then people would argue, well, why should that just be for Daventry people and people all across the district come here? So you know, there's a lot of questions around that special expenses. So I really would like to see that, you know, broken down so I can fully understand what it is. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan, and after we might go to the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a very busy month actually, because we also had scrutiny where we presented as well, and all members are welcome. Special expenses always comes up at this time of year, and I can understand why. Of course, I get the same questions as Abbey South Ward representative. Councillor Randall, of course, remember earlier on in the season, it's also reflected that we took out the public conveniences, special expenses, which has obviously had benefit to the direct people of Daventry town in terms of not having that expense because of the bus location, etc., and traffic to and from. I'll come back to Councillor Randall's point in a minute. Thank you, Councillor Bunting. Of course, the point is about the general going concern, again, which we also spoke about at strategy. We also had a training session on that. Perhaps there is, to ensure members feel absolutely comfortable with how this is done, that we look in the next cycle at a training session on that, perhaps. I think the members that were at the training session recently felt a lot of benefit from that, and again, that'll help us on that issue. I do want to really, before I take to my seat, raise one point, and that is, I think as a district council, we've done our absolute best to keep the council tax rise down as best as possible. But of course, as we see when we look at the precepts, the town council have actually increased theirs by £146,000 per year, and I'm sure, again, like all of us, that'll be transparent, but I'm sure members of the public, when they receive their bills across the town, will be wondering why there's £146,000 increase there too. So Councillor Randall also will have a role to play in passing that expense on to the public, and hopefully that is also good value for money as well. Thank you, Chair.
Do we accept the recommendation?
Agree.
Against? No one.
Can we have the abstention, please?
Sorry?
Abstention.
Abstention. 2. 2 abstention. SG0819, new rehabilitation building. David James, Councillor David James, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you. Before I start, you'll be pleased to know that last night in Planning Committee, committee voted unanimously to approve the plans for the new rehabilitation centre at Western Avenue on behalf of Reach. So that is out of the way. Members will recall that the council did decide to fully fund the new building. The estimated budget was 1.48 million, which included an element of 20% of risk and VAT of 20%. The VAT may be recoverable, but VAT in commercial property is a highly complex subject, which I used to know that, but I've forgotten 90% of it. We may be able to recover some of that, so thus saving on the 1.48 million. Strategy discussed first the risks, the rationale, and concluded that it is in accordance with corporate plan objectives and community strategy, and that it would be desirable to go ahead. But during the course of the strategy meeting, whereas it was considered originally that we were going to lease the new building at a peppercorn rent, some members felt that we should be charging much higher than a peppercorn rent, in other words, more than the nominal amount. Now, I give away no secrets here, and I say that currently Reach for Health rent from the council premises at the marches premises which have a rental value of about 18,000 a year, but for which they pay 12,800 a year, a reduced rent, and the arrangement works well for both parties, both the council as landlord and of course for Reach for Health, who provide a valuable community service. So following the views expressed at strategy, Daventry members had words with senior officers of the council and also discussions with Reach for Health too, and it was decided that rather than charge a peppercorn rent, it would probably be beneficial for both parties actually to charge them the same rent that they're paying now for the new premises. Now, I might add the new premises does have a rental value considerably in excess of that amount. But then some of us were under the impression originally, when we gave the go-ahead to this, that it was only going to be a peppercorn rent. Thus, we were giving them a new building with one hand, and they're going to take it back with the other hand. It's not on the table. But anyway, it appears that that arrangement would work satisfactorily for both sides. So therefore, you have before you the original recommendation from the Strategy Committee, but I would like to suggest that we add the following words to that, which is provided that Reach for Health will be charged rent at £12,800 per year, indexed annually by CPI. That's the Consumer Price Index. I'll read that back again. Provided that Reach for Health will be charged rent of £12,800 per year, indexed annually by CPI.
Is that a third recommendation?
Yes.
Thank you. So the third recommendation, can you clarify one more time so we make sure it's encaptured properly?
Provided that Reach for Health will be charged rent at £12,800 per year, indexed annually by CPI. Now, it may well be that the business team decide to rephrase that to be much more tidier and legally tight now. But that is the recommendation. And that is agreeable to Reach for Health, and that is agreeable to senior officers of the council.
Thank you. Councillor
Seconder.
Seconder.
We need a seconder before we discuss it, Chairman. All right. Thank you. Right. New rehabilitation building. Well, we know it. It's better if I talk about Reach for Health, because that's what we've been discussing over these last few months. And this is basically the business plan. Now, it refers to building and premises, it comes within Councillor James' portfolio, which is economic regeneration and employment. Needless to say, I'm very happy to second it. The two recommendations are there before you. They were approved at Strategy Group. I'm pleased to say that the planning application was approved, as Councillor James stated, unanimously at last night's planning meeting. So really, tonight is the last piece of the jigsaw to enable building work to commence. The very last piece. This is decision time. Allied to the recommendations Councillor James outlined, and he said that there were further discussions. We reached agreement that Reach for Health will pay the same rent as their current building, indexed annually by CPI. Following that, I was able to put this before their trustees, to which they agreed, and one thing they also agreed to, which I was very pleased with, they would submit an annual report, and this to me solves any queries over the rent, etc. I think that's very important. We are all, I believe, well aware of the benefits of this building and what Reach for Health can bring. A top quality building, a refurbished car park, which all those on site will welcome, because the car park on that site, which is used by 5 or 6 others, is in a bad way. Help to the NHS. They've already, in my opinion, saved the NHS quite a lot of money. It's going to help GPs and referrals. Better facilities to patients, a unique offer to our residents, and an additional thing, support for our local sports people. And I'm very pleased that that includes disabled sports people, which is something very close to my heart. I know Councillor Lomax as well. And this applies at grassroots level and others. This, I firmly believe, smooths the way for the proposals and the business plan to move forward. Those are my reasons for supporting this. I definitely appreciate the cross-party support I've received on this application and what I've received from other members as well. And I earnestly ask you all to give your support to this project once again. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Shakeford.
Chairman, 2 observations only. I don't want to rock the boat because clearly it's the will of the council to support this project. As a project, it's a good one. My reservations last time expressed, of course, were on the governance issues. The debate at Strategy Group was because we identified arguably, I say arguably, we identified arguably a cost of some 3 million rather than 1.48. And we come to 3 million because we have 1.48 of the construction costs and 2.6 million of foregone rent, i.e. rent over a reasonable period of the lease at 89,000 odd a year. And that, for those of us who debated the strategy, was a step too far. Hence we came up with the suggestion of the strategy that there should be some form of rent. And the suggestion was made then that it should be a 50%, a 5-year rent-free period followed by a 50% discount. That has morphed into what we have now as a proposed agreement of 12,800 for the duration of the lease. The current lease gives a 30% discount. The new lease would give an 86% discount and takes the percentage of £12,800 as against 89,000. We just make that point. This does involve a very significant discount. And I'm sure that when we come to see the lease, conventionally, of course, it would be a lease at 89,000 with a side letter saying that whilst the premises are occupied by Reach for Health, the concessionary rent would be applied, or something similar. Simon, I hope is nodding his head. So something similar to that. So what we would not be doing, of course, is a lease at a contractual rent of 12,800 for the principal reason that the lease is assignable, and we would not want the lease to be assigned at that rent. So that's a technical point that I'm sure lawyers can solve. Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of members of the council declared interests as being clients of Reach for Health. I'm not, but I suppose I should have declared that my wife is. However, I shall continue. It's perfectly clear that at the last meeting of this council, we agreed that the rent would be peppercorn. Is there not something in our constitution that says there is a period that must elapse after one decision before that decision can be overturned?
It was a recommendation.
The last meeting of the council, not the meeting of the strategy committee, at the December meeting of council, it was agreed that it would be at a peppercorn rent. Now, while I'm waiting for a response on that point. If I can just add another. I'm concerned at the manner in which this negotiation has been carried out. Yes, look, I understand that the rent that has been suggested is well below what the market rent for the building could be. And for that, yes, I am grateful for that. But if you sit down with people who actually need that building, if their organisation is going to survive, and put it in the terms that you feel, the only terms that you're prepared to put it for recommendation at this council meeting, that's not a fair negotiation. That is effectively telling them. What chance have they got to come back and say, actually, that is not correct? I think this is a reversal from not just from the decision, but the spirit of the decision that was taken back in December. I think it is putting enormous pressure on Rich for Health in a completely unfair way. If there is going to be a debate about whether they are charged 12,000 or whether it is peppercorn, that is something for us to discuss here. We have decided that this is a project that ought to be part of the district council's legacy to the district. The great majority of us have spoken very positively about the work that this project does, and I just feel that this is in principle a wrong way to go about this. It is a lot of money to ask a voluntary organisation to get into the business of raising an extra 12,000 a year. That is one hell of a lot of fundraising events. When they have already taken on the work of saying that they are going to do the fundraising, for the equipment and everything else that goes into that building that enables them to provide the service. I'm totally opposed to this.
I will ask Simon Bowley to, and after I will also ask Simon Bauer to...
Chairman, I'm happy to take that for a second and then come in. If I may, because I want to just point out the minutes of that meeting that Council Ritchie referred to. In the minutes of the meeting on the 7th of February, is that what you're talking about, Council Ritchie?
I'm actually at the moment looking at the quoting from the strategy group minutes, page 69 of our papers tonight. The decision made at the council in December had been that the lease be based on a peppercorn rent.
In the minutes of the meeting on the 7th, that's right, on that, it says the decision made at council in December had been that the lease be based on a peppercorn rent, but if members decided otherwise, that could be implemented. Yeah. That's what it says. Yeah. Now, the other thing I want to say, Councillor, is you have to be careful here, because the deal that Reach for Health are getting is very favourable. Now, the reason why members in this council support the deal, because we actually believe in what they do, and we want to see it expand, but it's very hard to do in their current premises. And the danger is, when we go to a unitary, this council might well support it, but the unitary may have a different view, especially going on a peppercorn rent. And the first thing they may do is say, well, that's too, we can't afford that, and they may come back with far more disadvantaged rates in the future. So we saw advantages for both sides, and that agreement was reached with Reach for Health and this council. Now, if you disagree with that, Ken, you're willing to vote against, that's entirely up to you. But I think personally this is a very good deal for Reach for Health. It's a very good deal for people who are going to use Reach for Health. We think we're going to encourage them to expand their operation because we think we believe in it. And there's a lot of people who support that. And I'm hoping, Chairman, that this will prove to be a great success. And I have great confidence in the people who run it. Thank you.
So we have Simon Bowley who will answer my point, and after Simon Bauer who will answer the point of Councillor Shepherd about the right.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't see this as undoing the Council's previous decision. One point I would stress, which is why you've got the recommendation one before you, is you needed to give detailed scheme and approval. Now, I was going to suggest, for example, that Councillor James's suggestion would actually tag on to the end of recommendation one. Just to clarify, that's all part of that detailed scheme approval, the business plan for the property and the way it's going to be funded, etc.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of Councillor Shepherd's questions, we are still working through the legal modalities. What I will say is provisional because, as Councillor Shepherd will know very well, when we have visits of lawyers, or with visits of lawyers involved, there will be discussion about the best precise way of handling it. What we're currently thinking of doing is the lease will be a user clause which is restricted to the charitable objects of Reach for Health, and a lease which is not assignable. On that basis, the expectation is the rent will be set at the level council agrees tonight, in accordance with the indexation the council agrees, and that avoids any potential for any abuse to occur of the concession that's offered.
Councillor Reynolds first.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, it was the point that Councillor James said. So, am I to understand that it will be increased yearly, the rent will be increased yearly? whatever percent, yeah. I would have liked to have seen no increase for the first 5 years, just to give them a chance to get on their feet. That's what I would have liked to have seen. You know, we've gone from a peppercorn rent to charging the rent that we've got.
You've paid that rent already.
Yes. I know they are at the moment, but that when initially when we agreed it was a peppercorn rent. Now it's gone from a peppercorn rent to charging what they pay now, but obviously they have got to fully kit out their new premises. So I would have liked to have seen that even though now we're doing the rent for rent, that rent would have been frozen for the first 5 years. I would have been happy with that, rather than just seeing it be increased yearly. So I would like to put in an amendment to that, to say that the rent that they pay now is the same rent that they pay in their new building, but it's frozen for the first 5 years.
Councillor Olga, please. Do you want to take the amendment? Do you have a seconder? Councillor Dabbs or Ritchie? Councillor Dabbs.
Chairman, I'm sure Mr. Bowers would confirm that the norm would be a 5-year rent on RPI terms or whatever. So certainly the headline rent is fixed for 5 years. That would be the norm on a lease.
We take a vote on the amendment.
Which one? Which one? We've got two.
What was the other one? No,
They proposed amendment.
Yeah, could I have clarification from the monitoring officer?
Yeah, Chairman, Councillor James was altered the motion.
Yes.
President of the meeting was happy with that, but now we're talking about a subsequent amendment, which is that the one we need to deal with now. So that was done, the consent to put that forward. That's the original motion. Now we've got amendment, we need to deal with the amendment and see if that becomes the substantive motion. So we need to deal with that first.
Can I come back to that, please, Chairman? I think the danger here for all members to realise is if you're going to go down the route that Councillor Shepherd just said, where we're going to, the rent is going to stay the same level as it is now, they're going to have a far better premises, and therefore, and they've got a lot of equipment in there already, and we recognise the wonderful fundraising that it's done to get that equipment in. But the real danger is, if you go to a new unitary, that there could be a change, if the terms seem to be too generous, that council, we don't know who's going to run that council, who's going to be on that council, could potentially change it to a far worse advantage than it currently is. And the idea is setting the rent at the current level, increasing by CPI, which on current inflation levels isn't very much per year, would be a far safer way, I believe, than leaving it for 5 years for a rent review. But obviously, if members want to go down that route, that's entirely their decision, Chairman.
So we will take the amendment. Councillor Randalls, could you... we just vote on your amendment?
Let's speak on the amendment.
Can you speak on the amendment?
Yeah, no, just like to clarify whether we have in fact agreed the inflationary increase with Reach for Health, because if we have, then I don't view it as proper that we effectively conduct ad hoc negotiations within this chamber when the other party isn't present.
Good point.
So we have a proposal.
Chairman, may I answer Councillor Brown's query? Members know I'm very passionate on this. When this came up, I discussed it with the trustees because I felt that was the way we could move forward, and I felt in a way it was best for both sides. I realised that whatever costs you have, there's always going to be problems, there's always going to be arguments, but this has been discussed with the trustees. I said that in my statement and I stand by that. We have got to move this forward. We can't keep on prevaricating, we don't like this, we don't want that, we don't want this. Let's make a decision tonight. Let's move it forward to enable Reach for Health to start building and get it moving. Because the quicker it's built, the quicker we'll see the benefits. So let's get on with it, let's make it, let's move it forward. And we certainly confirm we have discussed this before. Thank you.
So we now just take a moment of breath. We will vote on the amendment, and I will not take any more debate if it's just for the rent, because we have debated, and as Councillor Hill said, we have a broad consensus, and it's important that we close the debate on it, and Councillor James would be. So we vote on the amendment. No, we have enough, please, of the debate now. So
I'm not impressed, Joe.
you are not impressed. I'm terribly sorry about that. It's my meeting, and I am very apologetic that I don't impress you. So on that note, we will take for the amendment. For the amendment, please. 4. Against? The amendment is lost. Councillor James, please could you come back, and we will take the vote after. Sorry, Councillor Olga, do you want to speak about the rent?
About the first one. Well, sorry, we finished this. Yes. Well, I mean, see, I didn't want to re-enter the debate, but the negotiations have been done with the trustees, and I think that's good enough for me. But I wanted to add a point about whether people thought it was too small. In fact, people think it's too much. This £12,000, what they're currently paying at the moment. The added value of this to the community financially, you know, with regard to bringing people recovery from traumatic injuries and self-reliance, is going to be massive. It's going to be, probably can't even quantify the cost. I wish we could. How much money that this facility is going to be saving. So I think 12,000 is modest, and I think they're going to pay back a big way to our community in many other ways that we weren't able to quantify. And the other thing I'd just like to say is I would just like to thank the officers. You know, this has been moved forward with all due diligence. There has been some really strong debates on both sides, but I would like to thank the officers for pursuing this. I will be supporting it, and I look forward to seeing that building being built. So thank you, Chair.
And I would like to clarify, it's 12,800.
Sorry, 12,000.
So, Councillor James, please.
If I can just say, I mean, I was one of those at strategy that would have sided with Ken with Councillor Ritchie over the peppercorn rent, but I accepted that some members were not happy with that. And then we discussed rent reviews, and I've said this time and time again, and I say it now, rent review clauses are extremely complex things. They're not clauses that can be debated in a room like this. You need legal and surveying valuation experts who can put the wording in. Some of them are pages and pages long. It's beyond us to do that here. I was very pleased to hear that the business director say that there will be a clause against assignment. It is possible to have an absolute clause against assignment, providing it doesn't mention with or so-and-so's consent, as long as it says not to assign under letter or as part of possession of the premises, full stop, anything. You can't have an absolute covenant against assignment. So all of those matters have been taken care of. So why can't we just now get on with it and pass this?
So we will go for the vote. For the recommendation? Agree.
Working for it anyway.
Against? HG09-1901, sports facility and investment strategy.
This is about the draft investment strategy, which is presented to you for adoption. Basically, the recommendations are that the comments and responses outlined in Appendix A are noted, that the draft report can be subject to minor editorial changes, and that the confidential actions outlined in Appendix B shall be undertaken with a budget allocation of £75,000. Now, this consultation ran for approximately about 3 months, and the responses were outlined in Appendix A. A couple of points I think that I've noted. As regards unitary, this strategy will no longer apply, but it could provide a basis for the new authority to act upon. Once adopted, the strategy will support the corporate strategic plan to promote healthy, safe and strong communities and individuals, and also encourage healthy lifestyle. That's its purpose, that's its aim. I put these proposals forward and I ask for members' support on this. Thank you, Chair.
Do you have a signature? Councillor Olga. Speakers?
No.
So I propose we go to the vote.
Agreed.
Against? Now, Simon Boury, we introduce item number 10.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the first of two reports on local government organisation, and both of our joint reports from the Chief Executive and myself. Both of us being involved in different ways. The first report, you know the context, and the context will apply to the next report, of course. The context being we've made a joint proposal to the Secretary of State, and as mentioned earlier, we're awaiting the Secretary of State's decision on what to do next. But that next is what's quite important, is the opportunity. You assume something is going to happen, the opportunity is there to try and influence the next steps. We need a vehicle really which is going to be better at trying to do that, and that's why a joint committee is being proposed. A place where we can get a common position and a single point of resolution is very important given some of the difficulties we can obviously see at times between councils. So the steering group agrees on the idea of joint committee, and officers certainly agree that it would be a sensible thing to do. And each council in the West is considering the same report, in essence. And one of the things we learned from other areas is that they also recommend that a joint committee is a sensible approach. So it gets heightened, if you like, in terms of importance because of the time frames that we are facing. It's very challenging, so that single point of resolution is very wise to have if we're going to try and get a local solution to what's going to be decreed nationally by Secretary of State. We don't write a lot of the stuff that is going to come forward in due course. So important to get that joint common position, so joint committee would be wise. Remind we're just trying to help to get to the next steps, to help the new authorities get in place and hit the ground running. Terms of reference for this joint committee have been proposed therefore to achieve that, and they're attached to the report and are being recommended to each council. There was potentially an update, well there is an update still to the report. You see in 416 in particular, there's reference to the county council's indicated position on number of seats to be had for each council on the joint committee. And what was agreed by the steering group was a split of 4 for Northampton, 4 for St Catherine's, 4 for Daventry, 4 for the county. The county at one point had in the cabinet report indicated it wanted 12 seats instead of 4. However, that position has changed, and the revised reports going to council on the 28th, I believe it is, do indicate a reversion, if you like, to 4. We obviously will wait that decision, but that is the current state of play as we understand it today. The committee would need to be balanced, and therefore we have need in this council for 3 of that committee to be Conservative or to be Labour. There's no need to change any of the other committees. The balance doesn't get altered to that extent, so that's good. And the schedule of the committees in general, with this bolted on, has been circulated to demonstrate what has been proposed and what's been nominated by the group leaders in particular. So, wise to have also, by the way, a partnership agreement to make sure we've got the ground rules in place, but bottom line is, like someone said earlier on a previous item, or 2 items ago, we need to move on with this work. We definitely need to move on. So the conclusion is clear that we think a joint committee is sensible and appropriate, and we have it before you with the advice and the hope as proposed in Secretary.
Thank you, Steve, Madam Chairman. Well, I'd like to propose the resolved items 1, 2 and 3, and also just refer members to page 83, which shows the 10 drafts of reference to this committee. There has been a bit of publicity recently about a slight disagreement we had with the county when we had agreed the position of 44444, and then out of the blue they came out with 44412. I just want to explain to members why the 4444 is the correct way forward, because we're not talking about the past, we're talking about the future. And each 4 councils have an equal stake in that future at the moment. So it felt right that the 4 representatives from each council is the right way forward. In fact, it's a debate about which we 5, 4 or 3, and then it came to 4. So therefore, that's why it's important that all of us have a stake in the future, have the equal representation at this stage to try and help build that future. And I'm very pleased to see the county now are putting forward what they originally said they would do, which is the 4 floors. I'm also pleased that we have an opposition member, which is quite right, it's politically balanced. Councillor Richard's been very helpful in our working group sessions about challenging and also putting good ideas in. I think every member has a duty to do that, actually. This is about the future of your area. Councillor Pritchard, I wrote to me, I'm going to write back to that one, Jason, tomorrow, about another issue locally. But all these issues that arise, I was at a meeting today, if you saw the amount of work to be done by 1st of April next year, when it's going to be actually D-Day, when the next be first day, vesting day of the new council, it's huge. And I think what will happen is not all that work will get done. What they're aiming to do is get to a safe and legal position on day 1, and then after that, there's a load of work to do after that, and see the unity progress for the next year or 2 after that. So this is a very important step. In fact, this council was advocated in the joint committee some time ago, but unfortunately we lost out on the collective vote, so it didn't happen. But this is quite an important part where decisions can be taken quicker, and get the information with representatives from each council on there to take collective decisions to move the process along. So I fully recommend to council we accept the pre-resolved items.
You have a second there?
As part of the Western group that I've been attending, this really is the only way forward. We really have to get this committee up, running and to work. So I fully support it.
Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chair. 2 comments to make. One is that many members of this council, along with others from other councils, attended a couple of seminars before Christmas, at which we heard several times the recommendation that joint committees should not only be formed, but formed as quickly as possible in order to start making decisions, because the steering groups are not decision-making bodies. And the second point that they made then, which was reiterated this afternoon by our new programme director, who is just coming to the end of his term as directing the change of Dorset to unitary, the joint committee is the new unitary. It's what Councillor Miller said, we're not looking backwards, we're looking forwards all the time.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. I broadly support this. I will not support proposals from Councillor Noel that often, but...
so much for you do now again, Councillor.
Lovely story.
I mean, there were 1 or 2 places where I have sort of put question marks alongside the report, and I appreciate that some of them might not quite belong. This agenda item and the next one tend to run together. I mean, the first thing that makes me anxious is the time frame in which all this is going to take place. We talk about the joint committee being in a position to formulate ideas and hopefully to influence the structural change order. Now, if we believe the government's programme, that gives us about 6 weeks maximum to actually have influence on at least the, in the first iteration of the structural change order, which strikes me as quite challenging at this point. The second area that I know I raised this issue at the recent reorganisation working group meeting. I find it difficult to envisage a shadow authority of something like 120 members that will have on their line of a number of months, and what it will actually look like, other than being the body that that is there in some way elects an executive that will get on with actually doing the work. And I just feel it is an area in which it would be useful for us to have, we might not be able to get clarification if nothing is clear at the moment, but at least a little bit more of the thinking that is behind what needs to be done. On 4.17, the bit that refers to political advance, I don't quite understand the reference to the county. The representatives that the county council puts forward must surely, in some way, reflect the political balance within the county, and I'm not quite sure how they do that when they are putting. It is not the case.
No, it's not the case. No, it's not the case. It's all Conservatives. I just wanted one shop to explain that.
Well, can I say my only final point is I'm delighted to hear that the county have changed their mind. I'm delighted to hear, I understand that the leader of the county has offered an apology. I don't know if any other senior members of the cabinet at the county have offered apologies to. Perhaps we'll hear more about it.
Councillor Bounty.
Thank you. I'd like to thoroughly support this proposal, and I think it's the only way we can move forward is to have this joint committee in place, and we need it as quickly as possible. And I commend to all members that we vote for this and move on quickly. My only concern is that we go from 12 to 93, and I'd like to stay at 12 because I think 93 is far too many.
Councillor Sheffield.
Chairman, I prepared quite an aggressive comment in relation to the County Council's proposing 12, in view of the fact that there seems to be a significant vote farce, and in particular a degree of contrition at County. I would tone down my remarks, but I thought I would at least share these words with you. This comes from an email sent by the leader of the county to other leaders seeking to justify the total of 12 members from the county and 12 from the rest. I have to act in the best interests of Northamptonshire County Councils, County Council. So the figures stated in the reports will be published will reflect this. Well, Chairman, I would have said, had not we heard of a change of heart and a degree of contrition, that those words are wholly inconsistent with anybody who should have anything to do with unitary arrangements, frankly. They are thoroughly awful, and I'm sure that the apology that may come from Councillor Golby will be incorporated to include that sort of suggestion. I'm sure I'm speaking to like minds when I encourage the four members that we're putting forward to the Joint Committee. They would have uttermost in their minds the best interests of the new members and new council and new ratepayers of the unitary, and not take any partisan position, as apparently is very much highlighted in that email. I'm sure I'm speaking to the on that point. Two quick questions, Chairman. We're told somewhere in the report that the Joint Committee would be in advance of the Shadow Authority. So presumably at some stage the steering group would disappear and the Joint Committee take over on pretty well the same day. Yeah, that's what I thought. But perhaps someone give an indication when we think that might happen. And finally, we do have a fitful amount. I appreciate that there's lots to do, as Councillor Miller said, but we do have fitful news releases. The last one, I think, was from the Chief Executive at the beginning of December. The steering group and I suspect the Joint Committee as well in due course will be remunerated. We have a report later on remunerating the steering group. Within their job description, I would like to think that at least one or two of them would take on the role of reporting back to the Council, not simply in the Council meetings that we have here, or indeed in the other meetings, but in the form of maybe a monthly email from our representatives on the on I think that would be helpful. That's all, Chairman.
Councillor Longino.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just answer a few points that Councillor Shepard raised here. Just on the communication side, John, we actually do send out reports on email. Emails are preferably communicated to all members. There was a report to send out very recently from myself and the Chief Executive. They are both our names. That's the latest update. I think it's last week it was. So we do, that's okay. We do send out regular reports. We have a working group, John. You're very welcome to come on to the working groups. There's number 2 lined up in the diary. Your input will be very helpful, your experience. But I think it's important that we do send out the information. We're not hiding anything away. We are being very transparent. And I think it's important that more members do get involved if they have an interest in the future. So I've said some members are going to take the opportunity to stand down, and that's entirely their choice. And therefore they may not want to be involved. If they want to be involved, that's great. Even if they aren't going to stand, just get involved in the process, because it's a fascinating process, as some might say. The interesting thing about the shadow authority is, according to, it's going down to parliamentary time actually, John, I think a lot of this. So Parliament has got to produce its time to actually get the Secretary of State's decision to actually go forward. Then Parliament has to go through the 2 houses to actually get that ratified. And I think once it's ratified, that's when the shadow authority kicks in, once it's been to Parliament. So therefore that's the timetable of Parliament rather than our timetable. The anticipation would have been in the normal circumstances that the shadow, the steering group, the steering group won't be there for long, but before it moves into a shadow. That's under normal circumstances, because actually we're meant to be actually starting on the 1st of April next year. So just supposing Parliament doesn't get around to doing this until early autumn, then that makes it very, very tight in terms of getting everything done through to the end date of the 1st of April. So we're really in the hands of our parliamentarians, and we will be lobbying our MPs, collectively, all the leaders are, to actually make sure this gets high profile in Parliament, because they've got other things in their mind at the moment, because it is important in this area. The other thing I would say was, I would say that if it's going to get delayed, it'll be no more than a year. But I think we should be pushing to 2020, because then it gives staff more certainty. They then have to make choices about their futures. And we're very supportive of our staff in this council, because we know how good we all are. And we do what we can to help them in the whole process. I know that. And I know Ian and his senior management team are keen to do that. Because it is about team effort, this. And that's why we stood up. John's made the point about the county council. I'm not sure what they were thinking about, having agreed the 444, and suddenly decided they wanted 12. Anyway, we've got past that now, and hopefully that will be sorted out next week at the county. Because it is important. One of the things that came out of that, more than the numbers, was the lack of trust. When you've brought up a relationship, we've got 4 councils, or 8 councils actually joining up overall, but 4 in the west, the county and 3 boroughs. It is important to have trust. And we were making some really good progress on that until that moment came. And the point of that was, it's put us all back for a long, long way. And all I would say to all of us on these representation boards, if you take a decision and you'll pass that decision, and afterwards you think, I wish I hadn't done that, it's too late. The decision's taken. So it's always very important to make sure when you're on that decision-making point, you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. So if it comes to the point later you won't regret it, that's fine. Because the key thing is you can't keep changing around, otherwise there's no point having these groups. There's no point going on to a group taking a collective decision, then one of them decides, well, they don't like it, so I'm going to change. And there's another member who won't mention the name, who decided he's going to do something different. And we had a right go to him, because obviously having taken the decision, you can't go back to your base council and say, I don't agree with it, because it's about collective working together. And we were making really good progress on that, so this incident. I'm hoping that's a one-off incident. I hope it won't happen again, Chairman, because obviously it's not going to do any of us any good. And the key thing is, one of the things that came out about the feedback from councils around the country who've been through this process was that no one council was above any other when you move into this sort of stage. So the 4 councils are all on an equal basis, or 5 in the north as it is, there's 4 boroughs in the north. So they're all equal, so no one council rules the rest. And that's the starting point. We're all moving to a new world. So no matter where you come from, it's equal status. And I think that's very, very important. Thank you.
Councillor Chandler.
I just wanted to point out a couple of things which I'm sick to be corrected on. One is that the actual discussion of the steering group is confidential, but the outcome is not a decision, because it's not a decision-making body. But we do and are willing to share intelligence, as it were, as a result of the steering group in terms of where we are in the process, and to make clear to people what the process actually involves, but the detail, it's not appropriate that that should be shared.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to really give a recap of the issues surrounding these numbers and the vote fast followed by another vote fast by the County Council. I think the decision by certain people at the County Council to renege on the initial agreement gave rise to immense concerns amongst many of us that all behaviours were coming back as though bad old days were here again. But actually, when I and Councillor Auger and many others went and spoke to Councillor Golby and reminded him of the importance of all of us working together as we enter this new era of Northamptonshire's local government, I was remarkably surprised at just how receptive he was to listening to backbenchers, to taking on board the feedback he was getting, and I think it just goes to show what a remarkable change there has been at the County Council, because I have no doubt whatsoever that previous leaders at that institution would not have listened to their backbenchers in the way that Councillor Golby did. I was surprised and pleasantly so by the contrition and the readiness in which he accepted the advice that we were giving to him, and I'm delighted that on both the County Council's papers for next week and on our papers tonight, we seem to be reaching an agreement that acknowledges the County Council's role in getting us to where we are, very sadly, but also provides a foundation for us all to move together in the interest of the residents, not any of the institutions that exist at this moment in time.
Sorry, Councillor Keith.
I just wanted to make a plea, really, because we've touched on communication early, and we get lots of communication out by email, but the actual group where we hold the evening meeting is not well attended. Yes, there's those that aren't so interested as we go forward, but it really is an opportunity to raise questions, to interrogate those that are on the committees, and together, working together, get a directive, and to hear what everybody has to say. So if you do want to influence and be involved, please come along to the meeting.
We are going to the vote to agree the local government reform in Northamptonshire proposed one committee.
Agree.
Item 11, Simon Bobby.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the second of two reports. Again, in context as before, and again, there's an update to come. I appreciate this report can be a little bit technical at times. It is government's focus, but there's obviously quite a political dimension to it. So, come the order, if there is an order, it will be written in a way that doesn't necessarily make that agreeable to you. Hence, what's being expressed in the appendix is not a draft order, it's actually suggestions or preferences to include in such an order. Otherwise, it would have been gobbledygook. So, as I say, one key next step is going to be the structural changes order if it happens. And as I said previously, it's not us that writes the order, but we've got this ability to influence its content. We are being invited to express our views as local councils. It's good to do so. Again, it's a common report to go to the councils of the West. Strength in being united. You can imagine that with government officials. They would like to see that everything is sorted out locally as much as possible because it makes their job easier, especially given the national situation that's going on with the Brexit debate and other matters. So the update I mentioned about the Joint Committee change position as a Kent Council, and as has been mentioned already in respect to the Shadow Authority as well. The proposal is to have, again, a fairly equal number of seats. Originally proposed 4-4-4-6. Was proposed at one point, indicated to be 4-4-4-12. Reversion back in council papers for 20, reversion back to 4-4-4-6 for the Shadow. And that was one of the main issues that come up post the steering group, which otherwise have done a good job in identifying the preferences as per the appendix, and which is reserved for the advice therefore. So other matters in the advice as well, though, beyond the structural changes or what to do with any negotiations with government, which are in advice 22. And it's the opportunity here to reiterate what was set out in the joint proposal about the challenges, or the asks, if you like, of trying to make this work and giving the new authorities the best start. So we know we can't include these challenges in the structural changes order according to government officials, and I think that is probably right. but we have the opportunity to still make a point to the officials and obviously then to the ministers as well. So advice 3 is to reiterate those challenges as per original. And then, not a structural changes or the point, but in advice 4 you see there's reference to the section 24 direction, explained in the report what that is, a series of checks, if you like, potentially on what councils may or may not do with their spend or their properties and such like their contracts. And the county council, in this case, has stuck to a position which is different, or the recommendation going to council rather, has a position recommended that it is different to the steering group. The steering group had indicated that section 24 would be appropriate in principle for all councils, in principle. So you can imagine the details of that to be subject to discussion with government officials, maybe for further review, but in principle, this seems to be a good idea. The county council are not comfortable with that as it's been recommended to them on the 28th. Again, we wait the decision, but I think that's probably the position as it stands. Like to go through. So members will want to consider whether they want to also have a section 24 applying or not. And I'll leave that with you. Otherwise, it's a case of you have the advice. I don't think I need to go over what's in the report. It's quite extensive deliberately. I assume the interest is there for having done it before. Therefore, I just look for the proposal and second agenda.
Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Simon Brodie for that introduction, particularly around section 24 direction. Can I just refer members to page 98, because this gives the preferences on the West Northampton steering group, the structure change order. This is what we're saying to government. The name of the new authority, West Northamptonshire Council. There was an attempt by the borough to put Northampton and West Northamptonshire, which was rejected by the majority. I think they thought they were along the lines of Chester and West Cheshire, and members didn't think it was quite the same, but we felt West Northamptonshire was already a name in people's minds with the West Northamptonshire Joint Planning Committee, with the West Northamptonshire Development Corporation, so in a sense the West Northamptonshire brand was already there. So that's what we agree with. A number of councils on unitary authority, 93 initially, that's the 3 councils per county division. We expect at some stage, probably once the authority has been formed, that the Boundary Commission will come in, and there must be potential to reduce that number, because 93 is actually quite a large number of councillors. And also, the point about where they will be situated, of course, people may have an idea, it might be Northampton, but that decision is still to be made. Style and forming governments with shadow authority, as we said already. Now, on the 6 weeks for Northamptonshire County, we showed some willingness to compromise there, and that's why we were particularly disappointed when they came back to the 12 number, because they put in the pitch for 2 more, and one would come from the South Northampton area and one from the Daventry area, and that's trying to show compromise and negotiation. And I know Councillor Org was there. Unfortunately, that's thrown back in our face for the 12. We're moving on from that now, so the county now agreed to this, as I understand it. I think it's quite important for seeking to establish an open and scrutiny committee, so that will involve members of all the councils, so I think that's very, very important. Responsibility for being in the first meeting of the shadow authority is the chief executive. We're having a debate about that, because obviously, if you're setting up a new council, and we're all separate 4 bodies at the moment, you can't put a new chief, you could actually recruit a new chief executive now, before the new unitary is formed, who will actually be the chief executive of the new unitary. But is that the right thing to do, when in fact the membership of that new council hasn't even been put in place? So it's a feeling today that the new council should determine who the new chief executive is of that new council once it's formed, and the members of that new council, once they're in place, would then be the ones who would actually determine for the leader of the cabinet who the new chief executive is. So that's the debate we had today. I don't know what members feel about that, whether you should think you should wait until that point, or do you actually get one in place now? Because the danger then, of course, is if you put one in place early, whoever's controlling the new unitary may not like that choice. And it might put that chief executive at risk, potentially. I'm not saying it would do, but potentially. So it's those sort of risks, and I'm thinking about these things as you go through the process. So probably what might happen is we'll have an interim chief executive in place to see through to the point of the vesting day, and the new council's formed, and a month after vesting day, of course, the new council's elected in May 2020 on the current timetable, and then we have to work out, then the councils then would then decide what happens next, and they may go out to a recruitment, wide recruitment process to actually attract a new chief executive. The feeling today was, from what I felt, maybe in Greece, but I just felt there's a desire to actually go out to wider consultation for that position of chief executive. And then once the chief executive's in place, you then form his own team beneath him, or her, him or her. Sharing the cost of the shadow authority is fairly straightforward. Votes without on the cycle of unitary authority in terms of elections. I had a request from my two fellow boroughs in this West Northamptonshire to go for first elections a 5-year term. So that takes into 2025. And then have another election. That then fits in with the existing county council cycle, because their next elections will be in 2021. And then we just go straight on from there, rather than going down the route of 4 years and a 3-year term. That's something for you to think about. And borough states it's not an issue. Section 24 we discussed. That's it. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
So you would like a change?
No, I'm just open to members.
Open to member, but
what do you think about the election
propose
cycle?
a change of 5 and 2 for member.
It's a suggestion be made by my two fellow leaders. Yeah.
Is that a... Sorry.
Yes, that can be done. Yeah. I just want to be clear whether that was the proposition that's been put forward from the chamber.
I've been told, well, yes, I'm sorry, I'm just saying, I'm just wondering what council felt about that, because the proposition was the one in front of you. So the two fellow leaders were saying they're going to put forward their council a 5-year term and then followed by the 4-yearly cycle. Which would actually make sense if you think about it. It makes it a bit neater.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? 5-4. 5 and 4-4-4-4. Yeah.
So do you have a segment of
5-4-4-4.
Jan, I think about a second, but I wanted to get some clarity on the election cycle. I was a bit puzzled when I was reading it, because it seems that by the time we got to 24 anyway, things are settling down. And if the point is because it gets it back into previous cycles, I mean, that's all in the past, isn't it? Yeah. It kind of strikes me as you get to 24 and then you do it for 4 years and carry on like this. I wonder if you can just explain that a little bit. And my view would be just 4 years, but maybe I'm missing something.
I think it's national cycle.
It's international.
National county councils.
2027 would get us back onto the district cycle.
Yes.
2029 would be the county cycle.
County national.
So the intention was trying to get back onto a regular cycle.
Yeah, I'm fairly relaxed on this, but what I do want to ensure that we've coordinated it with all the other councils, so we don't end up with the county doing one thing and us doing another. So if we can have some reassurance that our other three partners are, like I've discussed it as part of the county negotiating team, it sounds perfectly relaxed, but we just need to make sure that we're not all giving up different dates, because that starts a little bit of confusion. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you. Again, I'm broadly supportive, but 2 issues. I think it's great if we manage to get through the idea that we move ahead in the for the first term with the 3 members for each county division. 93 is a big number, but there have been councils that have been up higher than 93. And I think it's important to recognise that even at 93, for the purposes of Daventry district, that would reduce us from 36 to about 18.
21.
36, if we...
7 divisions times 3.
Sorry?
7 county divisions times 3.
What? Yes, if we have a total of 93 councillors, Daventry district makes up just less than 1/5. 1/5 of 90.
No, Chairman, that doesn't work. No, let's explain, Chairman. The 93 is made up of 17 divisions in the borough times 3, which is 51 councillors, and South Northampton and Daventry both have 7 divisions, which means 21 councillors in each borough. So it's 21, 21 and 51. That makes up the 93.
An extra 3 is good news. I find it difficult. I find it difficult to understand why for the county we have been allowed to get off of a situation in which the ratio of councillors to electors differs in such a way between different areas. But anyway, it is a big difference. Looking forward to the second round of elections to the new body, if there is a big reduction, which we've got to expect, that is going to be very bad news for representation, local democracy, the extent to which people feel that they are in contact with their democratic local government. And I think that's regrettable. And I don't know, I have looked through other structural change orders. I don't see anybody actually looking forward to say, look, what will happen after the first round. But I think it is something that needs to be considered. I know that Councillor Miller has told me quite emphatically why messing around with 3 per electoral division simply can't be done at this stage. But I still am of the view that I haven't given up the idea that there are some of these electoral divisions are quite absurd. The one that I would point straight away is Bronson, which is very clearly 3 quite separate areas. It is the northern part of Daventry. It is Bronson, the villages around about Bronson. And then it is everything from Barbie right across to Yelverton. 3 very, very different areas. If you have 3 councillors, it seems a lot more sensible to regard these as different things. However, that's something than which there will be debate. My other concern is the Section 24 directive. Now, it makes sense to me that if we are going to be living together with these other councils, there has got to be some sort of rule that we all follow to make sure that there is not an incentive for somebody to go out and break the bank with a spending spree just before all this happens. But of course, if we have a Section 24 directive, well, it applies to us. And listen to just when it is that it would actually apply. There are a lot of things that we as a council are talking about. This council is not due to meet again until sometime in the second half of May. Now, it is quite a long gap, and of course normally at this time of the year we have that long gap because we have the elections that take place at the beginning of May. And it allows that the council to have its elections and then for people to reconvene. There are a lot of decisions that we need to take. We haven't come to the big ones yet in this agenda about cinemas and Site 5 and things like that. There may be all sorts of things that we still want to talk about things that we feel we need to spend money on. There may be further issues that come up around, what are we going to do about Bridge for Help? And I just wonder that in these circumstances, is it not sensible for at least to recognise the option of holding an extra council meeting and having the council meeting slightly more often, given the pace of events that there will be over the coming months?
Thank you. Councillor Gifford.
Thank you. It's taken a lot of hard work, toil, blood, sweat to get to this point. You'd be surprised how many hours you can spend just debating a name. But this is where the joint committee should come into its fruition, in that this has been a steering body and not a decision-making body. So hopefully we can now get a bit faster with our decision-making. So I'm broadly in agreement, obviously being on with everything that's there. The only thing I wanted to check is on the votes, because I know you've mentioned, Chris, that you've spoken with the other 2 boroughs, but I wouldn't want to be in a position where we were now going back and disagreeing with what the county had agreed. I want us all 4 to be in the same, because that's what the whole point of everything was that's happened in the past.
Councillor Amina.
No, thank you, Chair. On the point about the election cycle, I feel a bit more comfortable actually, despite the reassurances from my 2 fellow leaders today. They're going down this route about the 5 years and 3-year term, or 4-year term, sorry, thereafter. whether in fact council could have that as a stated position, but be a position to actually change if the others change. Is that possible, Simon?
Yes, Chairman, it'd be useful to have a cue from council to take that forward, like a reserve position. We do talk in advice too about the amendment of submitted preferences and how we handle that. So there's a way to deal with that, Chairman.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just on the matter of consistency, which Councillor Guildford has raised, and also on the Section 24 direction that Councillor Ritchie raised, albeit from a different level to which I'm going to approach it. The County Council has published papers minus the Section 24 direction. Now, I don't think anyone here is going to accuse the County Council of wanting to play the bank again. But the County Council wishes to have the Section 24 direction removed simply because that S24 imposes a spending limit of, I believe it's £100,000, and correct me if I'm wrong. Now, within the County Council's operations, we deal with adult social care, children's social care, and some of those care packages do exceed £100,000. And from the perspective of the County Council is that having that Section 24 direction in place could seriously inhibit its ability to provide those services to the most vulnerable. So at this point, I would like to actually make a formal proposal that we delete recommendation 4, which puts forward the Section 24 direction. I get a vague sense that there's some agreement to that in the room. It would also provide some freedom to us as a district council to proceed with the various plans that we currently have to deliver to the residents of Daventry, and it would also provide consistency across the west of Northamptonshire that we're seeking to provide.
Chairman, I think it's a consequential, this is what I'm trying to say, it doesn't actually go to the NCO as such, it goes alongside it, and that's the point that can be put down the road. Am I right?
Chairman, yes, we understand it's going to be a consequential order, so in due course, but not at the same time.
Not at the same time.
We are going to go to the vote. And would you like me to take one by one? It's my understanding.
That would be the wise thing to do, Chair.
So that it be resolved that 1. So recommended preferences for structural changes order as per Appendix 1 be included in the submission to government. Do we agree to the vote?
Chair, just to clarify, with the reserve position, potentially,
the reserve
in the election.
Sorry, the actual thing going forward is along the revised version of 5 years and 4-year elections, but that can reverse back to be like the others. Thank you. 2.
Amendment of the submitted preferences as arising from negotiation with government official be delegated to the Chief Executive in consultation with the leader and with the monitoring officer, where it is not expedient to formally report to council or duly appointed committee. Do we vote on number 2? Third, the submission be accompanied by a statement reiterating the council's original position that government commit to meeting the challenges and ensure that we are collectively equipped to deliver success as per the Council's original joint proposal. Thank you. 4th, the submission includes an expression in principle, desire for a consequential Section 24 direction. So what do we do there? Do we take that one and turn it down? Of consequential Section 24 direction to apply to all the councils, the details of which to be separately agreed between the council and government. Who's also favours? Are you in a preference? Yes. Because
it's consequential.
Yeah.
Chairman, the advice is, as it stands, to say in principle support for Section 24. We've heard some views as to whether that would be appropriate or not. It's whether you want to also express, therefore, as per the advice, or you want to say no, we don't want to do that. and therefore kind of align with the County Council's position.
So what?
Bring the vote. Agreed.
No, sorry.
Vote. Go to the vote.
Sorry.
Go to the vote.
It's a vote.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question on it first, Chairman? A question. The question is, although we make a preference whether we want to section 24 or not, it's not us that decides, it's the government that decides.
That's correct.
Whatever way we say, whether we want them or we don't want them, they will decide. The same with the numbers eventually. Okay.
Go for the vote?
Yeah.
Agreed. Against?
Can I abstain?
Abstain.
Abstain.
To abstain. Now, item 12. Councillor Green, this item. Thank you, Chairman. It's a long night.
It's a very long night. Members will be used to this report. We have it annually. It is an independent report from the Independent Remuneration Panel. If you turn to page 102, 4.2 explains their workings and how they arrived at their suggestions. I would also like to point out that all members are under no obligation to accept any increase. You don't have to have the increase, and you also don't have to take any allowances. So always bear that in mind if you don't feel you need it. I'm very pleased about the carers and dependents allowance, because I did approach the panel some years ago about that, hearing the difficulties of people getting childcare in order they can fulfil their duties. So I'm very pleased that they're still happy with that. Then there's the SRAs to consider, and the extra work that this unitary situation is causing. And it does appear to me to be reasonable, their suggestions, but I would also point out that the additional SRAs, they will be payable for about 18 months. It's not, long term, it's not forever. So please bear that in mind. So, as usual, years and years ago, we decided we wouldn't get involved as members in the local government pension scheme, and this is upheld here. So all in all, I do hope members will be able to support this independent report.
Madam Chairman, I have a very simple view on this. We have an independent panel for a reason, as I believe I've expressed before. Whether they recommend that councillors' allowances go down by 2.5% or up by 2.5%, that independent panel exists to take the politics out of what would be otherwise a very, very difficult decision for councillors to take a view on. So I will support the recommendations of that independent panel without any further comments.
Agreed.
Chairman, only a very tiny point. I think Councillor Griffin was not actually right when she said that the allowances, the extra SRAs would be over 18 months. The SRAs we're talking about are the steering group. We hope the steering group would change quite shortly to the joint committee. And the steering group, certainly I would hope, not going to be in existence in a year's time, I haven't said.
Very short term.
So it's actually, the steering group, the extra SRA that you mentioned here will stop shortly in the next few weeks or months, certainly nothing like 18 months. And presumably, Chairman, that we will need to instruct the remuneration panel again in respect to the joint committee allowances.
And the shadow authority.
And the shadow authority for the joint committee allowances, and presumably there will be an instruction from the joint committee
Not
from us.
Not from us.
No.
So we're only concerned with the
Joint committee.
with the joint committee for the period of existence of the joint committee.
Of course, the joint committee actually covers all the relevant sovereign areas as well. So we have to be collectively on that.
Councillor Dabbs.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm concerned about these special responsibility allowances. I can understand there is an increased workload and perhaps some compensation has to be provided, and fair enough. But it's much higher than our standard council allowances. I looked at it at 22%. Why on earth does it need to be so much higher? Is the workload so much higher than being a councillor of this organisation? That somebody can answer that. But also, I'm concerned about the dual hatters. Will the dual hatters receive an allowance from here? I assume that some dual hatters will be on these committees, and also from the county council. It's only one inconvenience, therefore it should only be one payment. So can I please have some clarification on that one?
Councillor Ricci.
Chair, a different issue. I can't support this. I won't oppose it, but I can't support it for a reason that I have given several times in this council in the past. I am deeply concerned that we have a scrutiny and improvement committee that only has 5 members. Is it 5? Only have 5 out of a council of 36. For the scrutiny of executive actions ought to be one of the main things that councillors are councillors for. We have had a meeting with the Scrutiny and Improvement Committee that only had 3 members there. Only 3 out of 36. Now, some time ago, there was a task panel. It was essentially the word of Councillor Frenchman, as he was at the time. And I was at least nominally a member of that task panel. And I felt it was a very, very modest request that was made for increasing the size of the Scrutiny Committee by 2 members. But by the time it had gone through the system, that recommendation had disappeared, with the explanation that if 2 extra members were added, the number of members receiving a special responsibility payment of some sort would go above 50%. It seemed ridiculous that our scheme of special responsibility payments should have prevented the council from doing the work that it should have been doing in scrutiny. To me, the answer is simple. Members of the Scrutiny Improvement Committee, and I am one, should not receive a special allowance. It is part of what we're elected to do.
Yeah, Chairman, not in response to those points, there was a comments accepted, but there were some questions from Councillor Dabbs, and there was also clarification sought in respect of Councillor Shepherd's point to Councillor Griffin. The panel were thinking of the allowance to be paid for 18 months, i.e. retrospective, and going into 1920, as part of the 1920 scheme. You're right to indicate the steering group will no doubt change in some form, but the work, I would suggest, will not change behind the scenes. There will still be work to be done. And I make this distinction from the Joint Committee. Councillor Chandler, for example, will be aware of the Joint Planning Committee. There was no extra allowance for that. But the work behind the scenes will be magnified enormously under this work. So the panel, I believe, had that in mind. I wasn't there, but that is what is being put forward, is an 18-month suggestion. It is within your gift, of course, not to take it for that full period, because you might take a view, actually, you don't need to the whole of that time because the work is changing. If that's the case. In terms of dual hatters, in the sense of dual hatters on the shadow, if that's what was meant, and also by the Daventry councillors, it was saying the Daventry county councillors, that's what was meant. The shadow authority will be required to produce its own scheme of members' allowances. And don't forget, the existing council will still be there with their schemes of allowances. I do know in Dorset that they also considered, when they had the shadow authority, they considered whether to pay allowances to their members to be on the shadow. And in the end, they decided not to. But they had to propose a scheme, and the scheme was for nil. That was in one instance. In terms of the county council and the Daventry district council, we pay separate allowances. That's how it works. Each authority has to have its own scheme. But the shadow will also have a scheme. And that would be an interesting debate for members at that time.
Councillor Griffith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to remind members that the panel maintains its original view that no more than 50% of the members should receive a special responsibility allowance, but they are saying that this situation is unprecedented and requires a great deal of work. And it's agreed to pay additional SRAs for 3 positions which are heavily involved in work towards unitary status, but they have no intention of making this something permanent. You know, that they are not looking at changing their view that in normal times only 50% of members should receive a special SRA. But also I would like to point out that through your senior members or your leaders, you can ask to address the panel when next they review, and there is that option. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Chandler.
I just wanted to point out, Chairman, that it's my understanding that membership of the steering group, which is what we're talking about, people are there to represent one council. So there's no question of would they get 2 payments if they were a dual hatter, because only one of the councils has put them on that steering group.
So could we go for the vote, please?
Agree.
Against? 1.
Abstentions.
Abstention 2. 3. Item 13. No, 20, sorry, now it's 4,000. So we have 10 minutes before the cutting point. So I will take item 13, 2019-20, capital and revenue budget and medium plan, financial plan. Councillor Morgan.
Chair, we should get this in before the witching hour. So this paper here we present is a continuation of what we had earlier, where we discussed a lot of the detail of strategy and also at scrutiny and also the training session. This is the final paper for the year. It wraps up the year and sets the scene for next year in terms of the budget requirements. As we've already spoken about tonight, and also still ahead of us yet on this evening's agenda, there's a lot to do, a lot of uncertainty around, particularly with Brexit and expectations around the unitary and so on. And it's been really very interesting the last couple of weeks and months, and there's almost been a bit of a turn where people have said, well, perhaps too prudent as a local authority, and we've had to almost defend our prudent positions. As we've all seen and what will come on the agenda later with the urgent business, it's always wise to be prudent to make sure we can plan for situations such as site plan we'll talk about later. So the whole of the revenue budget medium-term financial plan here is based on being a going concern, yet still having that tightrope towards the future, as really raised by Councillor Bunting earlier. So here we have 4 items before us. The first one is noting the report of the Section 151 officer. That's actually on page 115. I'll come to one item on there in a moment, but she's already read that. It's a statement we have to make from the 151 officer. The next item is approve the consolidated summary team revenue budgets. I'll make some points on that in a moment. The third one is note the overall proposed district-wide budget requirement and Band D council tax level for the coming year 1920, and to note the general fund revenue budget projections 2018 to 2024 in the medium-term financial plan. And we know that many members often see when we get to the earmark reserve section, they go crazy with excitement, thinking got lots of cash to spend. And of course, as I pointed out in quite a number of the last meetings now, we do have challenges ahead. First point I'd really like to make is in terms of the government grant. So from the on section 4.1 from the last meeting, we've now got that figure, of course, which is in the numbers, which is 2.269 million. and that of course is down on previous years. And as we've also spoken about, there are pressures coming in terms of reduction of our income sources. If we go on to the 5.1 section on page 109, you can see the number there, the net budget requirement 16.263, which is what we've said we need to run the affairs and get ourselves in a position we want to be in. I'm now going to turn to the table on page 110, 5.5 table. Members will be familiar with this table. You've seen it earlier in the evening and you see it at each of the strategy meetings. And I've raised concerns about this before we all go crazy, if you like, and want to spend money. I draw members' attention to the 2020-21 figure of 1.570, which is actually where we showed that we had a deficit situation. There are, and there will be, because we're planning in that potential deficit now, there will be contingencies that we can make, but members need to be very careful. And each of the decisions we make here, spending on this scheme or that scheme, or even the discussion we had earlier about rental income from Reach for Health, they all make quite severe impacts potentially on this. So we've got the number in front of us, as well as all the other things we need to plan for. We need to be very careful. The impact of that over the cycle, and we are planning as if we are going to be here, we have 6.943 as non-earmarked reserves at the end of the cycle, which is a considerable decrease on where we are now. So members need to be careful of that. We also see later in the meeting when we speak about the impact of section of the development site 5. This will also have implications as well. But what we have been able to do is keep the council tax to the £5 level, and the notional figure, which is really the notional Van D figure, which we point out there, on page 113 is £1,789.20. And you can see the increase there on that notional figure of £98.34 is coming from various sources, of which are laid out in the table. Across the table in the subsequent pages. Now, in the section 151 officer's report, there is a particular item I'd like to draw your attention to, which is on page 118. In the earmarked reserve section, you'll see the town centre row. The numbers for 2331. Sorry, the other way around, so it's 31st of March 2020, I'm going to call American for a second, is actually 0.884 is showing us, but because of the potential implications of the town centre 5, that may well be 1.6 million. Obviously, the meeting that we're going to speak about with Henry Booth only occurred late last week, and we still have to work that through the numbers. But members are reminded that we have to tread very carefully. There's no big, incredible pots of cash here lying around for us to get our hands on to spend. We do have to be prudent. I've always been very proud, while I've been on this council, to be associated with a prudent council, and I'd like us to stay that way until we wind up with that, as indeed, of course, happen. When we go to the final section, which is the appendices, page 121 onwards, this lays out the breakdown. I've no intention of going through all of these, but you can see on page 121 you have the headline figure 16,263,502, which is the number you saw earlier. And then some of the other numbers which we already discussed in the early part of the agenda, 126, which was the special expenses discussion we had as well. So that's the numbers. I think I've just managed to get that in before 1:15, and I'd like members to take any questions and put that as a result.
Do you have a second there? Councillor Osborne. No, it's a recorded vote. So we go to the recorded vote. So please, it's going to be just before 9:15. Do you want to carry on?
Yeah.
Four.
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 4.
Stephen Jones.
Abstain.
Deanne Evans.
Agreed.
Councillor Joe Guilford.
4.
Councillor Liz Griffin.
Green.
Councillor Alan Hill.
4.
Councillor Steele Swift.
4.
Councillor David James.
Agreed.
Councillor Catherine Lomax. Councillor Malcolm Morley.
Agreed.
Councillor Peter Matson.
Agreed.
Councillor Chris Miller.
Agreed.
Councillor Colin Morgan.
4.
Councillor Stephen O'Crourn.
4.
Councillor Kevin Parker.
Agreed.
Councillor Sarah Peck.
Agreed.
Councillor Jason Pritchard.
Abstain.
Councillor Wendy Randall.
Abstain.
Councillor Ken Ritchie.
Abstain.
Councillor Ian Robertson.
Agreed.
Councillor John Shepherd.
Agreed.
Councillor David Smith.
Agreed.
Councillor Mark Warren.
Agreed.
Councillor Mark Wesley.
4.
Councillor Nathan Gordon.
Agreed.
So now I am going to take 14, the Council Tax Resolution 1920. Councillor Morgan.
Chair, thanks to the members for voting on the whole for the previous item. There's a lot of items to be resolved here. I shan't read them out. I mean, this is very straightforward in actual fact. Once we've dealt with the previous item, this is simply a matter of recording all in terms of laying out the actual individual council tax items for each of the areas and concluding on what the council tax shall be for our members of our public to look forward to. And I don't really need to say any more other than it's a set of tables with a breakdown for each of the parishes, etc. And I'd like the full support of the council. Thank you, Chair.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Brown. So we will go to the recording vote.
Councillor Ross.
4.
Councillor Walker.
4.
Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Bunting.
Agreed.
Councillor Chandler.
4.
Councillor Knapp.
Abstain.
Councillor Evans.
Agreed.
Councillor Guilford.
Agreed.
Councillor Griffin.
Agreed.
Councillor Hill.
4.
Councillor Swift.
4.
Councillor James.
Agreed.
Councillor Lomax.
Agreed.
Councillor Longley.
Agreed.
Councillor Matson.
4.
Councillor Miller.
4.
Councillor Morgan.
4.
Councillor Osborne.
4.
Councillor Parker.
Agreed.
Councillor Sarah Peck.
Agreed.
Councillor Pritchard.
Abstain.
Councillor Randall. Councillor Ritchie.
Abstain.
Councillor Robertson.
Agreed.
Councillor Shepherd.
Agreed.
Councillor Smith.
Agreed.
Councillor Warren.
Agreed.
Councillor Wesley.
4.
And Councillor Gordon.
Agreed.
Item 15, Councillor Whitney. Thank you, Chairman.
I asked members to agree the pay policy statement for 2019, and there is a requirement to get this done by the 31st of March. This statement has been prepared in accordance with statutory guidance and proper regard to equalities and a consistent and rational approach to pay. Please note the details in the attached document, which includes the discretion policy. Members will recollect the review of our pay policy in October last year, when they approved a revised pay structure and a bargain of 150k from the recruitment and retention budget to the salaries budget. Members were then only too well aware of the challenges ahead, and their decision has positively influenced staff turnover.
You have a seconder, Councillor Morgan.
Chair, no further comments. I'm very happy to support this statement. Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie.
Can someone explain, I'm looking at the bottom of page 152. During the past year, we introduced new pay scales that were sort of driven forwards by the introduction of the living wage. Something that should have been brought in to raise the lowest salaries compared with the median. Yet that final paragraph says that actually that for 2019-20, the ratio was higher than it was the previous year. We are still getting more unequal in the way in which we pay our staff. Is there an explanation for that?
Sorry, Chairman, I don't have an explanation, but
Thank you, Chair. The answer is it is a mathematical equation, and that is the answer. I think what explains it is that there are more people, or fewer people at the lower end of the scales than there are at the upper end, or elsewhere within the salary scales.
So do we agree?
Agree.
Agree. Against? So now I will take item 18, urgent business, and on the urgent business I will take item 19. The report that you have in front of you, that is the urgent business, development of 7 town centre, visually satisfied, economic regeneration and environmental issues. Councillor J. We do that one first. Because that's we do not address.
All right, fine with you. Site 5, well, there is a short paper in front of you to do with Site 5. Basically following a meeting on Friday last week, chief executive, senior officers and the leader. The conclusion was the development agreement with Henry Booth would have to be brought to an end. Now, before I go any further, I will read you a short statement. This is getting late tonight. Keep in mind they have been to go. Let's have a look at the background to this. Providing more and better shops was a key part of the Daventry Town Centre Vision 2021, adopted following widespread public consultation. There's every reason to believe that this remains important to the public. Much of the spending power of local residents goes elsewhere because people don't have the range of shops in Daventry they would like. However, the physical layout of Daventry Town Centre means it is difficult and expensive to provide larger shop units in forms national chains require. The Council's partnership with Henry Booth was a logical way of addressing the issue. Henry Booth was selected following a competitive process under an agreement designed to deliver enough development to support the costs involved in making major changes to roads, etc. Just after the development agreement was entered into, the global financial crisis emerged. This profoundly affected the value of such property and the willingness of retailers to open new shops. The effect of the crisis continued in waves and effects over several years. So Henry Booth and the Council agreed a series of changes to the proposed schemes and the development agreement. And remember that the time had been brought before it. During the same time, the retail landscape has also radically changed and continues to do so. In particular, the growth of internet shopping has been beyond all previous expectations. Recently, further changes have gone through the British retail sector, with major store chains effectively going bust. or entering into company voluntary arrangements and going into liquidation or having to have rights issues and so on and so forth, closing down companies. No, there's an issue. This has further affected values. The effect of all this, together with the issues of cost explained in the report, is that neither Henry Boot nor the council can see a way for Henry Boot to deliver what the council and local people wanted. Therefore, it is proposed to bring the development agreement to an end. The investment Henry Boot has made over the years of more than 5 million, of course, should be recognised. Whilst clearly a sad day, the council is now in a position to look at other options. It controls all of the land in Site 1, Mulberry Place, and Site 5, and will have a free hand to look for other partners to take specific development forward, as well as to progress Mulberry Place itself. Therefore, Council is asked to agree to the advice. And the advice is the development agreement be brought to an end as described in the report and be hopefully by a short lead of termination. The Council explores alternative options to secure the appropriate development of Daventry Town Centre Division 5. Now, that's going to be a matter that will have to have some consideration. It wouldn't be appropriate, I don't think, and this is my personal view, to simply fire from there and go in with something else completely straight away. Particularly as we are in a changing market still, and particularly in view of the authority's position vis-à-vis unitary. And it may well be that if we were to sit down in a room with experts, the business department, we might come to a little bit of a different conclusion as to the prospects of site. Maybe there's a better scheme out there. We don't know unless we start to think about it. Remember, we've already initiated things which might have a jolting effect on Site 5 by the Mulberry Place development, which is, to the advantage of any development of Site 5 if that's completed. When that's completed. So it wouldn't be right to just have a, knee-jerk reaction to it. And I do know from an email that I received this morning that there is still interest in that site, at least another supplier, and probably more than one too. I know that because of expecting instant solutions is not really appropriate, but they are there. And I'm confident that whatever happens, Site 5 will get developed for valuable use. It may not be whilst BBC's in existence, which it won't be obviously because it takes time to build it, but it will be under the new unitary authority. So don't be despondent about this plan. So I'm asking your sympathy.
Another seconder? Councillor Gifford. So Councillor Wasted?
Yeah. Thank you for letting us know about this. So it is certainly disappointing for the people of Daventry. I do agree though, we shouldn't be jumping into anything that we don't know what we're getting into, but I hope that maybe not for a number of years that it's taken not to do Site 5, which is certainly disappointing. But maybe it's time for a complete reappraisal on that. I am a little bit confused about the 0.996 million part in the report though. I don't understand if we've got control of all of the land, what's the 0.996 million for? It's just not clear.
Simon? Yes.
Simon Bowles.
Chairman, thank you. In 2016, the council implemented a deed of variation with Henry Boot, which varied the then terms of the development agreement. What has happened is over time, the council has acquired some of the land and paid for, generally, as the book says, through land from the WNDC, land forming parts of Site 1 and Site 5. Other parts of the land, although vested in the council, were paid for by Henry Boot. That represents part of the 5 million that Henry Boot ran up in the years he was working with the council. The council had the ability always to retain that land if the development agreement came to an end, but it would have to pay for it at the price that Henry Boot paid. In 2016, as part of the deal then, extended the development agreement and allowed Boots another chance effectively. The deal was struck, which cut off that sum and fixed it at this 996k number. The council therefore has known that, since that's our written report said the figure that would be in the capital programme. And we will have to pay it in any event in order to release the Site 1 land that Henry Boot paid for in order to give them a place. So it's no surprise that it's there. All that will happen as a result of the proposed actions tonight is the payment of that will come forward probably 2 or 3 months from when it otherwise would have been due. So it's not unexpected, and actually in terms of the assets we get full control over, it's good value for money. I hope that explains the point.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. I accept that this is very bad news, and I say that, although I hated the proposals that were being made for Site 5. But to come at this time, when we are running so short of time, Councillor James says that we should take our time to actually not have a knee-jerk reaction to sort of think through. We've got to do that thinking, it strikes me, very, very quickly if we're going to get there. I have found this many times. I just feel there is one obvious solution to this. We have planned a cinema in a place where the cost of that cinema went up by 4 million because of features of the site. It got planning permission last night in spite of many reservations about the effect on a conservation area. Here we have a space where I fear that unless we can do something imaginative, our legacy to Daventry would be a briar patch where we took away an open-air swimming pool built with the contributions of Daventry's residents, and that is all that is left behind. It just strikes me that that is a place where you have got space, you have got parking, everything is there, and we don't actually need to spend money on trying to knock down a building that is recognised as being not a listed building, but one that has got architectural and historic merit. I just feel that it is the obvious thing to do, to look for a quick way of saying, look, can we actually transfer the whole project that is based on the cinema at Mulberry Place. Let's actually retain that as a conservation area. Let's actually put this on this particular site. I would like to think that there was time, and I know that time is going to be very short, but we're not the only people with an interest in this. There is the town council and there are the people who live in Daventry. I think that there needs to be some mechanism by which we involve them in trying to work out what the solution is going to be. Well, that would be my ideal way forwards, but I recognise that if there is a Section 24 order that may come along very quickly, then there's very little time for manoeuvre.
Thank you. Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, on point 2, the council explores all alternative options. I just wondered how they were going to explore the alternative option. Is it going to be, were they going to go out to the public to ask them what they wanted, or? So that's my question: how they were going to explore alternative options.
Councillor Dowds.
Yes, thank you, Chair. One idea I've got, I think, is why can't we have a cinema under an open-air hall? Plenty of space down there. I'd seriously, though, with the abandonment of Site 5, I come back to Ashby Road again. It was meant to have traffic calming measures. We won't get those if we don't have the development going ahead. Also, the roundabout, I think, I would say deliberately so, has been neglected, and therefore is this not a chance to do something with it? restore all the lighting, make sure all the glass that seems to manage it to appear every single day is swept away, and the leaves are tidied away in the autumn. It seems to be a surprise to our contractors that we get leaves in the autumn. Nobody ever seems to clear them away. I don't know whether it is this council's responsibility, but bearing in mind the generosity that we've extended to things that aren't our responsibility, perhaps we could make sure that the local environment around there is tidied up. It does look horribly derelict, and as Councillor Ritchie says, it'll just be a wilderness full of brambles. Thank you.
Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if I got it right, but didn't we just a little while ago vote for the 24 notice and ask the government, yeah, we support that, whereas the contrary view from the council would be not to support it because they perhaps have things that may go over 100,000. So if I've got it right, any future use of this, if the government issues that notice, you ain't going to be able to spend that sort of money anyway, especially if the notice is issued in a few weeks' time. Have I got it right, Chairman, or not? That's the point I'm asking. We voted for it, and yet we seem to be restricting us ability to spend over £100. Is that correct or not?
We've asked Section 151 to do that. Was that point or was that?
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the Section 24 notice, the Section 24 notice is a process that will be put in place that just has additional approvals that will be required. And if a scheme stands up to scrutiny and is good for going forward, then there is no reason to think that the scheme would not be approved. It just has to stand up like any other process, and that Section 24 is put there to just have checks and balances in place. So it doesn't mean that schemes won't happen. They will just be checked as per the Secretary of State's direction by a body, or if it's not himself, as to who he directs. But it means that it has to be a further approval. So if the scheme stands up, it would still go through.
I'm just supplementary to the answer of that then. So, Chairman, the government, I'm just making sure, the government doesn't look at the authority and say, look, you've spent too much money, you're going to be in the cart in a couple of years' time, and now you want to spend more money on doing this. So, isn't that a consideration by the government or not? That's my last question.
Through you, Chair. As this authority has to go through its processes to make sure that it balances the risk and affordability and all the things that go in place, the new shadow authority will do the same thing. And whoever the Secretary of State, like I say, directs to give that approval, will look to see about the affordability and the sustainability of projects going forward. So all of those things will have to be taken into account, just like it would be as if we were, continuing in our sovereign body as CDC.
Nobody else wants to speak, so Duffy and James. Could you consider James?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to correct maybe a misapprehension that members, or some members might be suffering from. We have not abandoned Site 5. It hasn't been abandoned. We're just terminating the development agreement with Henry Boot. And this is why I said we need to sit down around the table and we need to discuss things with people who know what they're talking about, the experts in this matter, and then we need to discuss it amongst councillors first, whatever. It may be that there might have, this might be a favour to us. You could argue that the financial crisis did us a favour because it stopped us going ahead with the old Mildred Place retail development, which might have landed us with several empty shops one day. So who knows? It might be maybe some other scheme, or maybe parts. I don't know. You don't know until you sit down with engineers, surveyors, architects and so on. So, no, we haven't abandoned it. We're not going to let it become a derelict site. And I hope that we're not going to leave bypass on the planning committee either.
So section 151 officer would like to come back on one point.
So, thank you, Chair. In the implications, the financial implications, the last paragraph on that page, it mentions that the council will also need to charge the revenue and costs it has incurred previously recorded to capital in the sites 1 and 5 schemes. The amounts concerned is being reviewed and an update will be reported to this meeting. You can imagine this has all happened fairly swiftly, so we've been working very hard. And I'm conscious that members have agreed tonight a medium-term financial plan, a capital programme and a SIL programme, whereas the decision on this will have an impact on that. We are still working through it, but the figure as it stands tonight that will have to go back to revenue from capital is around 1.6 million. You'll know, because it was highlighted by Councillor Morgan in terms of the reserves, we do plan for these unfortunate events because of the significant amounts involved. So we do have an earmarked reserve for aborted schemes. As pointed out, there's only 884,000 in there. So the difference between that and the 1.6 million that we've identified will be charged to general fund reserves. And it wouldn't be right either, with so many other things still to deliver, to absolutely raid that pot and leave nothing in it. So as well as the 1.6 million, we will have to leave some in that reserve, just in case there are other schemes that have to be aborted at a later date. So it's going to be approximately £1 million that's required to be drawn down from general fund earmarked reserves. On top of that, obviously the scheme was generating £1.258 million worth of SIL receipts, which obviously will no longer be coming through. There's a whole knock-on effect in terms of that. So some of the SIL receipts were funding some of the capital programme. We're going to have to look at the profiling of that in terms of the income. It may be that we have to use the Strategic Infrastructure Fund to smooth out some of those timings. Again, that's one of the earmarked reserves. So between the 1.6 million and the loss of income of SIL, that's a change of around £3 million. I hope members now see how fortuitous it is in having these earmarked reserves, when just on one scheme we can change to the tune of £3 million overnight. On top of that, some of the other things that will have to be looked at, some of the schemes that were proposed in particular, just as an example, we were going to do some car parking works. I'm not saying we won't be doing that, but it may be that we look at that in light of the Site 5 scheme, because obviously the car parking will remain for the time being. So that's where we are at the moment. It's our intention, as soon as we've worked through that more fully, to bring the report through to strategy group to update both all three, the medium-term financial plan, the capital programme and the SIL programme.
Councillor Winston.
Thank you. Just to clarify, why does it have to go from capital back to revenue when it's not abandoned, when it's still a scheme?
Thank you, Chair. You can only charge to capital if you're going to produce an asset. Whilst we haven't abandoned Site 5, all the expenditure we have so far will no longer produce an asset that was planned for. Now, it may be that later on, if some of those plans are resurrected and fulfil the same brief as was there before, it may be that we can look to recapitalising some of those revenue spends. But it has to be, if you imagine all of the work on the consultants, on design and things like that, the chances are that the scheme is going to change somewhat. So all of that expenditure that you've spent on one type of design is no longer valid and will not be producing an asset. And the rules are that you can't charge that to capital unless you produce the asset.
Now, can we go to the vote? Do you agree?
Agree.
Against? No one. So now I am terribly sorry. Now I will take item 16 and then we will go to item 17. I will ask the press to read, please. So item 16, development of Mulberry Place and future active farm. Councillor objects.
Thank you, Chair. Right.
So, and we are just talking about the first part, which we are taking in favor as a process we are
Sorry, I'll just repeat that. I'm only discussing the white paper, now the pink paper is not going to be discussing those unless there's no results. And press. Right. Well, there are two resolutions here then. That the Mulberry Place business plan intended to be shortly approved. That has been circulated anyway. But approval will be given to the submission of an expression of interest for the future High Street fund as outlined in the report. And if the expression of interest is successful and the funding received, may be used to support working up a full bit. What does that mean? Right. Well, first of all, the first part of it is that I'm asking for approval of the business plan. The cinema did receive planning permission last night. The voting was, I think, 12-4, one again. So it has been approved, that part of it, which of course mitigates some of the risk factors in the plan report.
Could I make a point of order? How can we discuss item 1 if it's confidential?
Because there is enough information in item 1.
I agree. I think it would be better.
Sorry, was the chair, please.
Sorry, no, I'll stand if I may. I feel that the whole thing should be dealt with together. Otherwise, you have to look at your question and think, oh, I can't report on that. It's how the whole thing hangs together. I don't think we should separate the two. I think if we need to exclude the press, that's what we should do.
I think, sorry, I will ask for clarification from the military officer.
Chairman, often it is the case you would consider both, sometimes you do it separately. Appreciate it. There's a proposition by the sound of it within the confidential session. I would suggest if there's a seconder for that, you take a vote on it.
So, now you would like to propose?
Yes, please.
Do you have a seconder?
I'm happy to accept that.
So, do you agree with the proposal that the press is agreed? So, members of the public and the press, please could you issue a consent of